Hi everyone. Good to see you on my channel today. Today I will tell you a wonderful story. It is full of love and kindness. I hope you enjoy it and I wish you an enjoyable viewing experience. Thank you.
In the labor ward, two nurses were hastily eating and chatting in the receiving room. Zoe was telling Tori a terrible secret, almost in a whisper, with a conspiratorial look. I learnt this yesterday. It turns out that our Vanessa's husband is a womanizer. He has a mistress. A long time ago, a former model. Not only that, but he got her pregnant. What a mess. Poor Vanessa. She's childless herself. She's had so many tests and nothing. I mean, she worships her Henry, blows him away. What about now? That cheating bastard's gonna dump Vanessa. He doesn't need her when he's got a pretty girl and a baby on the way. Watch it, Tori. Don't tell anyone. And most importantly, not a word to Vanessa. It's none of our business. Let them sort it out themselves. Don't bother the poor woman's soul unnecessarily. The second person she talked to shook her hands. Well, men have gone all the same. No matter how much you feed the wolf, he looks into the forest. But I heard something else. I don't know if it's true or not, but his mistress Amanda is having an affair with his boss. She's fooling around with two of them at once. And now she can't figure out who the father is. That's how it is in life. Someone does not get a single man, and someone from the admirers cannot fend off. I feel sorry for Vanessa. Such a good woman, even if she's not beautiful. Why did she have to go through this? The women finished eating and left, not even suspecting that all this time behind the screen, where there was a microwave and refrigerator, sat on a chair the same Vanessa and heard everything. After they left, she covered her face with her hands and cried bitterly. No appetite at all. It turned out that everyone knew about her family drama and was talking behind her back. How disgusting and unpleasant it was. Vanessa looked at herself in the mirror hanging on the wall. She was looking at a tired 35-year-old woman. Already a second chin was showing, her figure was blurred. On her head, a perpetual sloppy ponytail. So what? All the same. Under the medical cap and gown, neither hairstyle nor outfits are not visible. So why worry? Tori's words kept running through her head. She may not be pretty. And she felt so bad about herself. But really, why did she let herself get so down on herself? So what if it's the same old problems, same old stressful job? But she used to be the first beauty in medical school. She had a lot of admirers. But out of all the suitors, Vanessa chose Henry. This confident, stately guy immediately attracted her attention. Henry wooed so beautifully, as in the cinema, gave roses and orchids, drove to concerts in the cinema. Their love was mutual. Vanessa felt it. The groom affectionately called her a kitten, so tenderly hugged and kissed. Their romance spun at breakneck speed. Soon they got married and began to live like a normal family. Like everyone else, dreaming of children, making plans for the future. Vanessa worked as a nurse in a maternity hospital, and Henry in a decent firm, which was engaged in finishing houses. Her husband's business was going great. They got a decent car, bought a summer house. Every summer they went on holiday to the sea. Vanessa was envied. Colleagues thought she was very lucky to have such a good man. They live in prosperity, the house, a full cup. But only every year the relationship between the spouses slowly deteriorated. The desired pregnancy never came. Vanessa ran to the doctors, but they just throw up their hands. She was perfectly healthy, and the doctors insisted that the husband also examined. Her husband had long resisted, sincerely believing that he was healthy. Vanessa went to pick up his tests a year ago and was astonished. It turned out that it wasn't her. It was Henry who couldn't have children. It was a twist she'd never expected. She didn't know how to tell her husband. She decided to talk to her mother-in-law first, as they got along so well. When Mrs. Olivia found out what was going on, she turned pale. "Vanessa, darling, please don't say anything. It would kill Henry. Let him think he's got it all ahead of him. He did get the mumps when he was a kid, but I didn't realize the consequences. It's unbearable for a man to know he'll never be a father. We women are strong, but men are very vulnerable." The woman was taken aback. "Wait, what about me? After all, he blames me for everything. He thinks I'm infertile. I'm already 35. If I don't give birth in the next few years, it's over. What am I supposed to do now? My mother-in-law asked me straight out. Vanessa, answer honestly. Do you love my son, or are you ready to divorce and find another man to play the role of father? Vanessa was confused. Of course I love him, and I don't want to ruin my family. That's why I came to you for advice. I'm at an impasse, you know. Mrs. Olivia replied, Then we'll have to be smarter than that. We're not going to tell Henry anything. I'll help you have the baby, I promise. I'll get my son to do IVF and we'll find a suitable donor. That way we can keep the family together and have kids. Do you agree? And it was her decision, of course, but Vanessa thought about it and agreed. She and her mother-in-law began to raise money for the procedure. Henry, though reluctant, also agreed. He really wanted to have an heir. 6 months ago, however, her husband began to change. He came home from work later and later, and often went to bed in the living room. He was tired or had a headache. And recently Vanessa saw him on his shirt bright red lipstick she had not used such a long time ago. It was obvious Henry had a mistress. Vanessa cried into her pillow, trying to pretend nothing was happening. She cooked delicious lunches and dinners and smoothed over conflicts that flared up more and more often over nothing. One day on her day off, she suggested it. Honey, and let's go out tonight, take a walk, have a good time. It had been a while since we'd been out together. Henry looked at her strangely and replied evasively. Vanessa, what are you thinking? We've been together for so many years. What kind of outings? We'll go to the mall and walk around. Oh, and I forgot I have to go to work tonight. The chief asked me to help. I can't say no. Vanessa was panicking. She didn't know how to save her family. And then a friend shocked her. She called me and showed me the phone recording. Look at this. Me and the girls had a birthday party at a restaurant a week ago. And there was your Henry. Not alone, but with a woman. Look at the way he's hugging her, the parasite. He's all around that woman. I couldn't resist taking it off. Otherwise you wouldn't have believed me. Vanessa watched the tape several times. Her husband's mistress was a very striking woman, blonde, slender legs, young, and a lovely figure. And Henry was unrecognizable, the way he looked at her. His eyes burning, whispering something. The woman squeezed her eyes shut, wishing she could open them and not have all this happen. She cried. How could it be? We've been together for so many years. Henry loved me so much, and now it's all ruined because of some girl. Why? Why is he doing this to me? Her friend started to comfort her. Come on, Vanessa, what divorce? Is Henry going to leave? Men all go out, I'm telling you. You just have to be patient and calm down. Don't make a scene, or he'll leave for sure. Live your life the way you've been living it. Shake it up. Take an aerobics class or a dance class. Get a fancy haircut. Let your Henry see a different you. It's all going to work out, mate. You just have to get through this difficult time. And now, sitting around her long cold lunch, Vanessa decided it was time to act. She didn't want to lose Henry, she loved him, and she had no idea how she could live without him. She made an appointment at the salon. She'd spent a lot of money, but she'd had her hair cut and dyed a nice copper color. She was going to go to the gym, but there was no money left. Vanessa decided that she could work out at home. There were plenty of workouts on the internet. It was high time to get rid of extra kilos. Her husband noticed the changes and was very surprised. Honey, your new hairstyle suits you. You've been transformed, and it seems you've lost a little weight. Well done. I really like it. You're right. It's been a long time since we went out. Let's go to the cinema like when we were young. It's been ages. Vanessa was thrilled. Everything was going according to plan. The evening was going great. She should be happy. But when her husband tried to kiss her, she suddenly felt disgusted. She imagined him having fun with that blonde, kissing her the same way. A lump came to her throat. The mood vanished. Henry, I'm sorry, I have a headache. I'm going to go to bed. And I have to get up early for work. The man even took offense. His wife had never acted like this before. She'd always loved him so much, jealous, and now this. But immediately on his phone came a text from his mistress, good night. I missed you. I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Kisses." All thoughts of his wife immediately vanished. A pleasant warmth spread through his body. Amanda made him lose his head. She beckoned to him, she whimpered to him, and it made his blood boil. He felt young again, full of vigor and energy, ready to do anything for the sake of his beauty. Henry loved Vanessa too. She was his reliable rear, familiar and understandable. He had no intention of divorcing his wife. She was more than satisfactory as a hostess, and her temper was not scandalous. Vanessa cried into her pillow all night. She didn't understand what was happening to her. On the one hand, she loved her husband, did not want to destroy the family, but on the other, knowing the truth about his secret affair, terribly jealous of him, and simply could not tolerate the intimacy with him now. The woman decided to make inquiries about her husband's mistress. In Henry's company there was a secretary she knew. Vanessa confided in Helen, and she was more than happy to tell her everything. "Wow, what a brave woman you are. You know everything and you don't say a word. I could never do that. This person is having an affair with 2 people at once. By the way, she's an ex-model. She was in an advert for our products. That's where she got noticed. They say she used to be in high demand and had a lavish life. But one day she stumbled and fell down on the catwalk. Now she's got some kind of leg problem. In the shows she no longer participates, but is filmed for magazine covers and in advertising, although the fees are not the same. I guess she decided to find a rich lover to live off him. I'm surprised she's not afraid of playing a double game. After all, our boss is a tough man, and he has a tough temper. If he found out, she'd be in trouble. He'd ruin her life. I feel sorry for you. You hang in there. If I hear anything new, I'll call you straight away. After all, we women should stand together." Vanessa wondered. Did Henry know that his mistress was pregnant? He has no idea he can't be the father of the child. That's my bargaining chip. I've got to scare Amanda away from her husband and stop trying to tie him down with someone else's child. The woman was outraged. What's with the nerve? Not only did she steal a man away from his family, but she decided to play on the pregnancy. Wait a minute, pretty girl. I'm not just going to give up. We'll see who's who, she thought. Amanda woke up in a bad mood. Her heart was racing. Her throat felt nauseous. And she had some stupid dream that she was in labor, agonizing, screaming, and then she realized that the baby was nowhere to be found. She was looking for it and couldn't find it. The girl looked at her watch. It was 6:30 in the morning. Today she has an ultrasound and a gynecological examination. She got scared. She went to the kitchen, drank a glass of mineral water, sat on the sofa, and thought. The news about the pregnancy did not please her at all. Moreover, it complicated the already confusing situation with her relationship. Who was the father of the child? The girl herself did not know, and it was even scarier. 6 months ago, she decided to take a part-time job, starring in an advert for the company's products. The director, an older, stately, gray-haired man, Mr. Alex, hired her immediately and hinted unequivocally that he would not mind having dinner with her, discussing the details of the shoot and relaxing. She had long been used to such offers during her modeling career and knew exactly what was behind them. Most likely the boss would offer his patronage in the role of mistress. At that moment, Amanda's financial situation was very precarious. She was desperately short of money, and here was such a solid bow. After a little chat with Mr. Alex, she understood that he was a businessman, tough, divorced his wife, and hinted to Amanda that she could take her place, and the girl agreed. Especially as the groom was very generous, he gave expensive jewelry, paid for beauty salons, in general, did not save money on the bride. Their relationship they have not yet advertised. Mr. Alex did not want to attract unnecessary public attention in connection with the divorce. A month later, Amanda met Henry in the same company when she went to their cafe for a snack and a cup of coffee. The man asked for permission to sit next to her. There were no free tables at lunchtime. Amanda liked Henry a lot. He was the opposite of the sullen and stiff Mr. Alex, cheerful, open, joking, and complimentary. And the way he looked at her was heart-stopping. He told her straight away that he was only the head of the sales department. He didn't make millions. And then he asked her out on an unusual date. He promised her a surprise. The girl agreed, even though she realized she shouldn't. Still, she was so drawn to Henry that she couldn't resist the temptation to spend the evening with such an interesting gentleman, promising herself that it would be a one-time thing. Henry took Amanda to a lake outside of town. The nature there was marvelous, the water so clear you could see the bottom. The beau had thought of everything in detail. They drank cold champagne, ate juicy kebab and ripe fruit, swam until nightfall. And then until dawn they sat hugged under a warm blanket, warmed themselves by the fire and counted the falling stars. It was so romantic that it took Amanda's breath away. She returned home completely happy. She wanted to sing and smile, and butterflies fluttered inside. The relationship with Henry was easy, interesting, like a fun, exciting adventure. He didn't promise or demand anything. They were simply drawn to each other, enjoying every minute of their date. With Mr. Alex, Amanda did not dare to break off the relationship, although she did not feel any joy from it. But the elderly gentleman provided for her fully was a man of business, did not like tenderness and sentimentality, a dry man, in a word. The longer it lasted, the more the girl blamed herself. She could not decide with whom she should stay. The news of her pregnancy shocked her and knocked her out of her rut. Now Amanda was completely confused and did not know what to do. But the thought of abortion was not allowed. She did not want to risk her health. The girl went to the ultrasound and examination, as if to be executed. The doctor confirmed the pregnancy, but shocked her even more. She would have twins. Amanda even burst into tears from surprise. She was certainly not prepared for such a turn. Near the ultrasound room, she was called by a pleasant female doctor and started an unpleasant conversation. "Are you Amanda Portman?" "I'm Vanessa Smith, Henry Smith's legal wife. I've known for a long time that my husband has been cheating on me with you. I know you're pregnant too. Now, honey, keep in mind, my husband can't have children. I just didn't want to upset him, but all the tests are in. Don't even think about tying him down with someone else's baby and taking him out of the family. It won't work. Otherwise, I'll embarrass you. Leave our family alone. Aren't you ashamed of having an affair with 2 men at once?" Amanda turned pale. She was terribly ashamed. How? He never told me he was married. He never told me much about himself. I couldn't understand why he was acting so strangely. He'd turn up and then disappear. He talked about traveling on business. Vanessa was taken aback, too. It was obvious that Amanda wasn't lying, and that amazed her. What a Henry. What a womanizer. He'd managed to mess with your head, too. Well, he always had a way with words and surprises. "So what are we going to do?" "It's not even a triangle. It's a square. Everyone at the hospital's already rubbing my face in it. It's my fault. I'm sorry. This is all my fault. I will cut off all relations with your husband today. I swear. Besides, what do I need him for? I have twins. He's not their father. He won't provide for me. I'll stay with Mr. Alex. I don't love him, but at least the kids will have a full family. Otherwise, I'll be lost alone with 2 kids. I've had it, you fool. I've made a mess of things. Now I have to clean it up." Vanessa felt sorry for the young fool. She didn't look like a conniving divorcee at all. She was probably just confused. The woman replied peacefully, "Thank you for hearing me, and I hope you keep your promise. My husband and I have been together for many years, and this is the first time we have had such a crisis in our relationship. I hate to break up the family, but you don't stand a chance. I know Henry. He'll never recognize another man's child, never love another man's child. But you hang in there. I hope the other man stays with you and helps you raise your babies." Vanessa was about to leave when she noticed a familiar bracelet on Amanda's arm. It was her bracelet. She had once given it to a girl as a keepsake. "That's my bracelet. How did you get it?" "I gave it to a girl when she was a little girl," Vanessa asked excitedly. Her husband's mistress, perplexed, replied, "I don't know anything. I bought this interesting trinket from a woman in a wheelchair. She often walks in the park. She's a black woman, looks like a gypsy. I could tell from her appearance that she needed money. She called me and begged me to buy a piece of jewelry. I really liked it. It's an interesting piece. I've never seen this kind of wheat before. Amanda, sell me that bracelet, please. It's a memento of my family, you know, Vanessa said firmly. The mistress grinned and took the jewelry off her hand. So take it. So what's the value? I bought it cheap. Mr. Alex promised me a gold watch, and this is just a trinket. Vanessa barely made it through the rest of her sift. One by one, fragments of her childhood and her best friend Iris Kerrigan began to resurface in her mind. Vanessa had been placed in an orphanage when she was 3 years old. Her parents had died, and there were no other relatives who could take the girl into care. Vanessa barely remembered her biological parents, only scraps of her mum's lullabies and her dad's bass and laughter. All she had left to remember her mom and dad was the same bracelet and a plush red kitten, which she never parted with until she was 10 years old. Living in the orphanage was not just difficult, but unbearable. Quiet, calm, well-groomed home girl all the time cried, huddled in a corner, refused to eat nasty soup with onions soaked with burning oil. She rebelled for a long time. She was often beaten, teased crybaby and rabid. When one of the children tried to take away Vanessa's stuffed deaf cat, she would defend herself so desperately that she would even bite. One day, little Vanessa saw boys trying to steal chocolates from another older girl while she was sleeping. She immediately made a fuss and screamed, "Iris, wake up, thieves! Sam and Peter are thieves!" The carers came to the noise, the boys were punished, and Vanessa was praised. But then all hell broke loose for the girl. She was teased for being a tattletale. They could lock her in the loo and laugh wildly. It was bullying. Vanessa hated the orphanage, often cried and wanted to get out any way she could. She didn't know how to fight at all, just covered her face with her hands, was afraid and cried. And only Iris stood up for her, helped her, befriended her. This brave girl fought, as well as the boys, and could attack the worst bully. She protected Vanessa, took her with her, and encouraged her. Vanessa was left behind quickly. "If they find out where you're hiding your cigarettes, you'll get in trouble." Iris also patiently explained to her the unspoken laws of the orphanage. "You shouldn't have called the carers. You can't snitch here. You have to learn to defend yourself. You have to get angry and fight back. So what if you don't win? The main thing is that they'll see that you're not afraid of them anymore, and they'll stop bothering you. It's hard for you here. You're a homebody. Maybe you'll be lucky and get into a family. Adults often come to visit us. They go and look at them. Some are taken away." Iris herself had a hard life, too. Her mother hanged herself. Her father drank heavily every day, and once he locked her out of the house and went out with his mates for a week. He never even thought about his daughter. Iris remembered this horror for the rest of her life, how she ate dry pasta and drank tap water. There was nothing else. The girl banged on the door and window with her little fists and screamed desperately. The postman, seeing the exhausted child in the window, called the police and an ambulance. Iris was treated for a long time for pneumonia. She caught a cold in an unheated house. The father was deprived of parental rights, and she was placed in an orphanage. It was easier for the two girls to survive. Now Vanessa and Iris shared all their joys and sorrows. They were even called sisters, so they were inseparable, although they were completely different in appearance. Iris was a gypsy girl, black eyes, long braids, and a dark-haired girl. And Vanessa, on the contrary, light as the sun. When she was 9 years old, Vanessa was adopted by good people. The girl's story struck a chord with the couple. They looked closely at this little girl with huge and very sad gray eyes, and their heart trembled. On the one hand, Vanessa was very happy. At last she would leave this hateful, terrible place where she felt so bad. But on the other hand, how could she leave Iris here alone? It was unbearably hard to part with her friend. The girls cried for a long time, saying goodbye, and Vanessa gave her friend her bracelet as a souvenir. Iris, as the eldest, comforted Vanessa and whispered to her, "Don't cry, dear, you'll be better off with your family. You see, you can't survive here. But I'll manage, I'll stand up for myself, don't doubt it." They made a childhood vow that when they grew up, they would find each other, and no one would be able to separate them. Years went by, it was nice and quiet, In her new family, she was truly, sincerely loved by her father and mother, and she paid them in the same way she tried to help her foster parents and studied for straight A's. When Vanessa was little, she and her mother sometimes visited Iris in the orphanage, bringing her beautiful clothes and sweets. The girl even tried to persuade her mom to adopt her friend, but she patiently explained, "Daughter, I can see how attached you are to Iris. You feel so sorry for her. I feel sorry for her. I do. But you see, Daddy and I aren't rich enough to raise another child. And then, understand my heart chose you, my girl, and I'm afraid that your girlfriend and I cannot love as sincerely, and she will suffer." Over time, the girl stopped talking. Vanessa had new friends, studies, swimming, and the usual childish fun surrounded her with a whirlpool, and she never heard from Iris again. And now this bracelet reminded the woman of that childhood vow. Amanda had told her that Iris needed a wheelchair, so she had to find her friend and try to do something to help her. Vanessa started walking in that very park, hoping to see Iris, but so far she had no luck. She never met her friend. Amanda was so angry with Henry that she barely waited until they met again. She told him everything. "It's over between us. Your wife knows everything, and I'm pregnant. But you're not the father. You can't have children at all. Why didn't you tell me you were married? I wouldn't have ruined your family for anything. So forget about coming here. We're not going any further." Henry was dumbfounded. "You and I are even, I see. You're good too. Who else have you slept with? Admit it. Who got you pregnant? And what makes you think this baby isn't mine? It's my childless wife, not me. Did you go to see her yourself? Why did you go to her?" Amanda told Henry about her conversation with Vanessa. The lovers had quarreled, and when the man had found out she was seeing Mr. Alex at the same time, he'd been mortally offended. Henry was choked with anger, jealousy. He also realized that a scandal at home was now unavoidable. All his secret life outside the family had come out in an ugly way. But somehow he was absolutely sure that Vanessa would forgive him, and they would live as before. After all, she loves him so much, carries him around like a piece of paper. But it turned out quite differently. An unprecedented scandal broke out between the couple for the first time in years. Henry thought it was no big deal. He hid his eyes and tried to get out of it. "Why are you shouting like that? I went out for a little while. It's no big deal." "What the hell did you tell Amanda about me? Why can't I have kids? You're the one who still can't give me a baby. And I'm not leaving you, even though I could. I got a little carried away. I'm sorry. Let's just forget the whole thing and go back to the way we were." And Vanessa just burst into tears. All the resentment she'd been holding on to came pouring out. She took out the documents, those analyses, and threw them in her husband's face. "Here, read it. It was your mother who persuaded me not to tell you anything, so as not to traumatize you. And she also told me not to break up the family, and to try IVF. Then I put up with your cheating, trying to keep the family together. And now I see that there's nothing left to keep. You don't love me, you don't appreciate me. You cheated so meanly you don't even feel guilty. How can we go on living? Tell me. You disgust me, Henry. I can't go on like this. You've ruined everything, and you've put yourself in my shoes. How does it feel to find out your woman has rejected you? And she's pregnant with another man's baby. It hurts. It's disgusting. Don't you think that's what it's like for me? I think we should separate. I need to come to my senses, so I'm leaving you. I never thought I'd do that. But you left me no choice." Henry was devastated. He kept reading the test results and couldn't believe it. He was never going to have children of his own. How could he go on living? Vanessa left soon after, packing her things. He sat in the chair, not knowing how to go on. Vanessa rented a flat and resolutely filed for divorce. Now she had only herself to rely on. Her mother-in-law called, got angry, asked her to come to her senses, saying that he was drinking. A man was disappearing. There were problems at work. But the woman could not help herself. All her love for her husband disappeared without a trace. She suddenly realized that she had been trying all this time to preserve something that had not been there for a long time. It was only out of inertia, out of habit. She couldn't forgive Henry for betraying her, that was all. Surprisingly, she was even more angry with her husband than with his mistress. He was deceiving the young girl, playing with her feelings. At work, Vanessa did not understand why divorce if her husband broke up with his mistress. The woman did not understand herself. She tried so hard to keep the family, and now something in her broke, as if everything inside was empty. Vanessa kept going to the park. Finally, she was lucky enough to see Iris in her wheelchair and recognized her immediately. The same charcoal eyes, but her hair was gray and she had wrinkles. Vanessa rushed over to her friend. "Iris, darling, I finally found you. It's me, Vanessa. We were such friends at the orphanage. Remember me? Here, look at the bracelet I gave you, remember?" Iris hardly recognized this well-groomed, pleasant woman as the frightened little Vanessa and cried. "Vanessa, what a meeting. I didn't think we'd ever meet. You look great, you've become such a lady. Not like me. Where did you get that bracelet? I had to sell it. I don't have any money. You can see where I'm at. A year ago I had a job and a family, and now I'm a worthless invalid." Vanessa sat down on the bench and excitedly began to question. "How come? What happened? Why are you in a wheelchair? Where do you live? With whom? I'm curious about everything. It's been so long since we've seen each other." Iris sighed and began to tell me. "You're the lucky one, Vanessa. You were taken in by a good family, but I was never adopted. When I got out of the orphanage, they gave me a dorm room. I've been working construction all this time. It's not a prestigious profession, it's hard. I was always tired, everything was dusty. But the pay was good. Life was gradually getting better. I got married. Samuel was our foreman. I moved in with him and we rented out a room. But married life wasn't easy. Samuel liked to drink. He got drunk and rowdy. I got in trouble too. But when he sobered up, he'd apologize, give me presents. I put up with it. I loved him very much. But I had bad luck, 2 miscarriages. Doctors advised me to give up hard work to save myself. But my husband was against it. He said there was nothing to do. And a year ago there was a tragedy. I fell from a height. I was plastering a balcony in a new building. I don't know how I stumbled and fell down. Then I had 2 operations and many months in hospital. I thought my husband would support me, would not abandon me. After all, we had been together for so many years. But it turned out differently. He left me without any regrets and married a young supermarket saleswoman. They already had a child together, and now I live alone in my dead room. Nobody wants me like this. I was born bitter. There's nothing I can do about it. I barely survive on my disability pension. Sometimes there's nothing to eat. I often wonder why I didn't crash to death. Why do I have to endure such agony?" Iris cried bitterly, so much pain in her heart. "Well, you poor thing, you've been through so much. Is there nothing that can be done? What did the doctors say?" Vanessa asked. Iris, sobbing, replied, "The doctors advised me to go to the capital. There is a Professor Schull. He seems to do such complicated operations. But where can I get the money? How do you live? Married? Any kids?" Vanessa also told everything about her husband's betrayal and his mistress Amanda. Then suddenly she took Iris' hand and made a firm suggestion. I thought I was the most unhappy of all. I was grieving. And now I realize that my problems are nothing. You're much worse off. I'll tell you what, let's live together. I'm renting a flat. It's got all the amenities, ground floor and a ramp. It's not like a hostel. We'll save up for your operation. I'm not going to leave you, Iris. You know that. We made a vow to each other, remember? Iris couldn't believe her happiness and immediately agreed. She was so sick of being alone. She longed for companionship and to know that someone needed her. The woman gibbered gratefully. "Thank you, Vanessa. I won't be a burden to you. I can do everything myself and I'm getting up little by little. I can stand for a couple of minutes and I've learned to lift my body well on my hands. I can take care of myself. And I eat a little bit. While you're at work, I can cook. I'll be waiting for you. God, I'm so glad we met, mate. I've been having these dark thoughts that maybe I should take my own life." Vanessa couldn't take it anymore, and she cried too. "I don't even think bad thoughts. We'll fight." "Nothing, Iris. Everything will get better, you'll see. Shall we go to your place and pack?" Then we'll call a taxi, move everything and rent out the room for a penny. So they did it. Within a week, the friends had moved Irina's things into Vanessa's flat, and Iris moved in with Vanessa. At work, the women began to think Vanessa was strange. They whispered, "She's crazy. Divorcing her husband and bringing some cripple home. After all, how well she lived with her husband, and a car, and a flat, and a cottage. And now she's left with what? Nothing. Stupid woman, as it is stupid." But Vanessa did not pay attention to the gossip. Surprisingly, but caring for each other and friendship healed both of them from the wounds of the soul. Living together was much easier and more fun. The women now talked in the evenings, could not talk enough, baked pies together, went for walks. Vanessa had invented an activity for her friend to keep her busy. She remembered that her friend was a great painter in her childhood, so she bought her an easel and paints and offered her, "Here, paint whatever you want, whatever you like, and I'll admire it. I always drew only scribbles, but you're a talent." They used to put your childhood drawings on the wall at the orphanage. Iris laughed. "Talent, you say? I haven't painted in ages, except on the walls when I was working." "Thank you. I'll give it a try. We'll see what happens. I'm curious." For a whole week, Iris worked on her first creation. She even forgot about her illness. Her eyes were burning. Vanessa was pleased and honestly didn't peek, waiting for her friend to show her the picture. And when she saw what had come out, she gasped. The drawing was beautiful. The blue sea, a yacht in the distance, and they were small. And the resemblance was striking, as if from a photograph. Vanessa praised her friend. "Iris, you're good. It's so beautiful. You really are a talent. I could never do that. How do you do it?" The woman even blushed and replied, "I drew from memory. It's our dream that we will go to the sea one day. Do you really like it? Then I'll draw another picture. Can I? You know, I'm so fascinated by the process of drawing, I lose track of time." Vanessa's supportive. "Sure, paint, and then we'll take your paintings to the park. Let passersby admire them. Such beauty cannot keep at home." 8 months flew by. Henry tried to call many times and even waited outside the hospital for Vanessa. But they never managed to have a normal conversation. The man was drunk all the time. He shouted that he loved her and begged her to come back, then blamed his wife for all his failures. He had long been sacked from his job. He got by on odd jobs and looked bad. After his wife left, Henry's whole life fell apart. His mother, of course, pitied him, helped him as much as she could. Vanessa looked at the man and realized that she would never be able to live with him again. It was as if a completely different person was standing in front of her. One day, when Vanessa was on shift, an excited colleague ran up to her and started talking. "I'm going to tell you something like this. We had an emergency while you were off. A woman in labor died. The same Amanda Portman your husband was having an affair with. Turns out she was hemorrhaging, and there was nothing they could do. They barely saved the babies. They're very weak. We're trying to get them out, but it's a long shot. So much for fate. I feel so sorry for the kids. Why did they have to go through this? If they survive, they'll end up in an orphanage, and then a home. You know what life is like there." Vanessa turned pale and thought, "Yes, I'm the one who should know. I wouldn't wish anyone to go to an orphanage. It'll never be family. God, poor Amanda. What a terrible fate to die so young." And she asked, "Can you take me to the prematurity ward? I want to see the babies. Please, I really need to." Zoe said yes and led Vanessa in. And the cubicles were two tiny, tiny babies. Their eyes were covered and their hands were so thin. Their fists were like dolls' fists. Their nappies were almost as big as their bodies. Vanessa's insides tightened, tears came out, and a sudden thought came to her mind. If nobody needs them at all, maybe this is my chance to become a mom. I'll raise the babies myself. I'll love them, take care of them. A family is better than an orphanage. Who should know that but me? Vanessa was thinking out loud. "You know, Zoe, I want to adopt those babies. But they have a father, Mr. Alex. I wonder why he hasn't shown up here yet. What's going on? I'm going to leave early today and go to his company. I'll tell him everything." Zoe shook her hands and looked at Vanessa like she was crazy. Vanessa, come on, come on. Why do you have to be so responsible? They're not even your husband's kids. They're not even your husband's children. Do you have any idea how hard it's going to be alone with them? Besides, you're divorced. You don't have a place to live. You don't have much income. You're just not going to get custody. Think about it. Something's been going on with you lately, taking in a handicapped friend. Now you're going to get yourself in trouble. I would never do something like that. But Vanessa didn't listen to anyone and went to her ex-husband's company. She barely managed to get in without an appointment, even had to scandalize. A young, stern, gray-haired man looked at her with irritation. Your name is Vanessa, isn't it? You are Henry's wife, aren't you? If you've come to ask for him, it's no use. I threw that drunkard out and I'm not going to take him back. Vanessa had no intention of leaving and went on the offensive. You're wrong, Mr. Alex. It's not about that at all. You had twin babies 3 days ago, a boy and a girl. And Amanda, your ex-lover, died in childbirth. Are you aware of any of this? I've never seen you in a maternity ward. The man is angry. Oh, that's how it is. She deserves it. What makes you think these kids are mine? That woman was trying to sit on 2 chairs. She was having an affair with me and Henry. She thought I wouldn't find out and I'd just raise them in peace. No way. Good people told me. I cut off all relations with her immediately. I've never been so humiliated. Maybe it's your husband's offspring. Who knows? Or was there a third suitor? I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not a fool and I'm not going to recognize and raise other people's children. And Vanessa, gasping at such cynicism, almost shouted, How can you not be ashamed to say such a thing? She, of course, made a lot of mistakes. But believe me, she is not such a terrible woman as you try to make her look. She's just confused, that's all. And the children are yours. I know they are. My husband can't have children. If you wanted to, you could do a genetic test and check that out easily. With your income, it's not a problem. Don't you realize the children are very weak, premature? They wouldn't survive in a baby home. They need home care and love from their parents. But why am I telling you all this? I'm trying to appeal to your conscience, which you don't have. You really are a soulless man, obsessed with your millions. And what do you live for? For whom do you save money? After all, children are the meaning of life. But you probably don't understand that. If you don't want to recognize paternity, write a written refusal. And I'll seek the right to adopt these poor babies. I've dreamed of motherhood all my life. I forgave my husband's cheating, didn't leave him, kept waiting for him to appreciate it. You are all the same heartless egoists. Do not appreciate, do not cherish those women who love. You only chase after long legs and young girls. I shouldn't have come here. Vanessa waved her hand and ran out of the office like a scalded woman. She started pounding the doorsteps of the guardianship service, trying to get through to them and get the right to adopt the babies. But as Zoe said, she was refused, as they prefer full families with their own living space, especially since there are 2 children. Her friend supported Vanessa as much as she could, because she herself had dreamed of children all her life and understood her impulse. Vanessa visited the babies every shift, even thought up names for them, Kyle and Mia. She talked to them for long periods of time, crying and apologizing for not being able to take them home with her. She prayed fervently for their health. Then one day a miracle happened when Vanessa was desperate. She and Iris were just preparing dinner when the doorbell rang. The landlady saw Mr. Alex on the doorstep and was stunned. She stood there in silence, blinking often. The man said hello, walked resolutely into the kitchen, sat down on a stool and began. So, Vanessa, I've thought a lot about what you said, and I've decided you're right about a lot of things. I gave Amanda a proper burial. I organized the wake. She had no relatives. That doesn't mean I've forgiven her. I just want the kids to know where their mom's buried. And I also decided to take the children. Now there is a process of recognizing my paternity. But here's the thing, I'm a serious man. I don't like sentimentality. Rightly, you noticed, a dry man. So I'll tell you straight, children need a mother. With my character, they'll have a hard time. Hire a nanny for me is not a problem. But you know yourself, it will not replace the mother and love babies will not. So I remembered your words. I've made inquiries. You're a positive, hard-working woman. You're just unlucky with your husband, it happens. If you haven't changed your mind about love and raising children, we'll go to the registry office tomorrow. Move in with me, and that's it. We'll do everything according to the law, don't worry. But I warn you, I have a temper. I can't stand meanness and falsehood. Don't worry, I've never raised a hand on a woman. I consider it beneath my dignity to offend the weak. I just say goodbye to a man forever, without regrets. If you're not afraid of difficulties, we'll raise our children together. I'm told you've already named them Kyle and Mia. Great, I like it. So what's up? Vanessa choked on her tea and coughed. Just like that. What about Iris? She's my closest friend, and she's in trouble. After a bad fall, she's now in a wheelchair. How can I leave her alone? We're going to get her an operation, but it's not going well, said Vanessa. Mr. Alex turned sharply to Iris. His face did not express any emotion. He said businesslike, "And I know all about you, and I'll help you. Maybe it will be the first good deed in my life. I will send you to the capital to the professor, and he will operate on you. And then you can decide where to live. You can live in our mansion. There's plenty of room. You can live separately," he suggested. The women were shocked. That's a real man, took and solved all their problems at once, without even blinking an eye. And Vanessa made up her mind. I agree. I'm not afraid of difficulties. And I'll be the best mom I can be to my kids, you'll see. Just don't rush me into anything else. I need to get used to you. All three of them suddenly exhaled and laughed. Mr. Alex couldn't help himself. So, almost wife, what's that smell you've got there? If you feed your husband with soup, you'll show your culinary skills. And don't give me any more lip. It's funny. The tension gradually subsided. They ate dinner, got to talking. It turned out Mr. Alex wasn't as reserved as he'd made out. It was just his protective mask. It's not easy to stand at the helm and manage everything for many years. Iris thanked him and couldn't believe she'd get a chance to get back on her feet. A complete stranger lending her a helping hand was something she had never dreamed of. Vanessa was worried, of course, nervous as to whether she would be able to get along with Mr. Alex. But she was so attached to the babies that she decided to take a risk for their sake. The couple married. The man didn't say a word of love. He just put a beautiful diamond ring on her finger and said, "Well, Vanessa, welcome to my home. I hope you'll be my mistress. You will be my faithful wife. Settle in. If necessary, you can change something in your own way. And think about how you'll furnish the nursery. I've ordered, you'll go with the driver. You'll choose the pram, cots, and everything you need. Don't look at the price tags. I'll pay for everything." Vanessa nodded, drank a glass of champagne, and Mr. Alex suddenly pulled her awkwardly and roughly to himself and kissed her on the cheek. And so began their married life. It was so strange to Vanessa. Henry was a joker, and here was a husband so silent. You couldn't get a word out of him. She was even a little afraid of Mr. Alex. The couple set up the nursery. Vanessa chose beautiful lullabies for the babies. She carefully chose the formula, consulting with the doctor, so that the children would gain weight faster and there would be no intestinal problems. Vanessa met her husband from work, inquired about his affairs, fed him delicious home-cooked meals. Mr. Alex smiled, ate with appetite, and praised. "Well done, hostess. Very tasty, thank you." After a month, we took the babies home without any problems. The babies had already grown up and got stronger, and were eating the formula, feeding themselves. At first, it was not easy for everyone. There were tears and lapping characters, and sleepless nights with lullabies. Yes, and tired very much with unaccustomed. But it was worth taking Kyle and Mia in her arms, and her soul became good. For the sake of her children, the woman was ready to endure everything. Gradually, Mr. Alex also changed, became softer, and loved Vanessa with all his heart. He admired her patience and wisdom. He couldn't find a better mother and wife. He still could not speak beautifully, did not confess his love, but proved it by his actions. For example, could just so, without any reason, presented Vanessa with a necklace or expensive earrings, saying only, "I bought it on the occasion of an award from the heart, and give her a big, bossy hug. And that was more precious than any confession. If he saw that Vanessa was completely exhausted, he would send her off to rest, and then he would say, "I've got a bubble bath over there. Go and relax, you need it. And I can handle the kids myself." And Vanessa, in response, gently pressed against her husband and whispered, "Thank you, Alex. You're the best." Vanessa fell in love with Mr. Alex for this very reason, not immediately, but deeply and sincerely. He really was a man of his word, a reliable support. Mr. Alex solved any problem quickly. He was in charge of the family too, and he was in charge of everything. Vanessa often thought now how wrong she was. He is not a cold man at all, but the most real man, as he should be. The businessman kept his promise. Iris was operated on. The professor did the impossible, and after a long rehabilitation, the woman began to walk a little. She endured severe pain, persistently developed her unruly, as if petrified legs, and could not believe her happiness. She was eternally grateful to Vanessa and her husband for their help and support. The family had taken her into their mansion so that she could recover quickly and not feel lonely. Iris loved taking care of the babies, and she grew to love them too. And when she recovered, she stayed with Vanessa and Mr. Alex as a nanny and domestic helper. For Vanessa, it was invaluable. It was very difficult to manage the children and the house alone. And with her best friend, everything was quicker. They were really like sisters, soulmates. Time flew by quickly. Here already the first tooth, the first step made babies. We decided to organize a christening. Of course, Iris became the godmother, and the godfather was chosen by Mr. Alex. It was his partner and friend Samuel. The party was a great success. The table was bursting with treats. Iris kept her favorite Mia in her arms, saying something funny in her ear, and she laughed gleefully. Samuel himself had not expected to be so attracted to this simple, swarthy girl. He began to court her gallantly. Even his slight limp did not embarrass him. In his life, he had 2 wives and many rich, spoiled society girls, but they were all hungry for one thing: money. You could see it in their eyes. What the man wanted was a family and simple human happiness. But Iris was different. She wasn't interested in clothes and trinkets. She still painted and could talk about it for hours. The best gift for her was an easel and paints. That's how a tender romantic feeling was born between them, and they became a couple. Iris just melted from tenderness and affection, because for so many years she lived with a tyrant husband, from whom, except for scolding and beatings, nothing good saw. She worshipped her fiancé. She could not believe that such love could exist. Mr. Alex chuckled. They baptized the children and matched the best of friends. Samuel, on the birthday of his beloved, decided to make an unusual gift, to arrange an exhibition of her paintings in a large shopping center. Iris was very worried and anxious. It all seemed to her that in her paintings there is nothing unusual, because she paints just so, for the soul. But she was very wrong. There was no shortage of visitors. Many wanted to buy these interesting works. Some even cried over one painting. There was a silhouette of a girl in a window pane, her huge eyes and a plea for help. But Iris was painting herself. Everyone asked, "Who is the artist?" Samuel would hug Iris and introduce her to everyone. "That's my fiancé's painting. Isn't she talented?" Iris was happy, because now she was doing her favorite job, which also brought a good profit. She spent most of her earnings on charity, helping orphanages. Vanessa fully supported her in this. The women knew how much they wanted to play on the computer or dress up nicely, so they wouldn't feel deprived. They even came up with a wish tree. The children hung notes on the branches, who dreamed of what they wanted the most. Then they unwrapped them and read them and cried together, because most of the time it said, "May my mom find me." 3 years later, Kyle and Mia were in kindergarten. Vanessa decided to go out to work. Mr. Alex was generally fine with it, realizing that he was getting bored at home too. He got his wife a job at a private clinic. The work was good, the schedule too, no night shifts, and the salary was decent. The woman just passed the medical examination, and then she was in for a real surprise. She could not answer correctly the doctor's question about her cycle, as she had long ago stopped following it. She was in her 40s and her husband was much older. They didn't think about protection, They just loved each other. But the doctor's words stunned her. Congratulations. You're about 4 or 5 weeks along. It's too early for an ultrasound, but I'll give you some vitamins right away. You'll take them strictly. At your age, you need to keep a close eye on your health. Take care of yourself. I'll be waiting for your appointment. In a month we'll be registered, said the doctor. The first thing Vanessa did was to call her friend. She was practically screaming. Iris, you won't believe it, I'm pregnant. I've lost my mind in my old age, but I'm so happy. I didn't think I'd ever have a baby myself. I heard a friend laughing on the phone. I congratulate you, my dear, but you won't believe it. And I'm pregnant. I haven't told anyone yet. I'm afraid to jinx it. I've had so many miscarriages and my back is so bad, but I hope I'm lucky this time. And Samuel's going to be so excited. He's so fond of babies. He's so keen to play with them. Wow, girlfriend, we even got pregnant at almost the same time. I can't believe it, replied Vanessa. The women decided to surprise their men in the evening. They chose the best outfits, set the table, prepared a festive dinner. Mr. Alex and Samuel were, of course, pleasantly surprised, but did not understand why they were having such a feast. The ladies looked at each other enigmatically and held out identical red boxes to the men. Samuel understood immediately when he saw the 2-stripe test. He started circling and kissing his bride. He couldn't believe that he would soon become a daddy. But Mr. Alex looked at the small test for a long time, twirled it, and impatiently asked, "What does that mean? You know I don't like riddles." Vanessa whispered to him, "What it means, you old prankster, is that I'm pregnant. So soon we will have not 2, but 3 children, and I will not go to work. Alas." Mr. Alex grinned contentedly into his mustache and remarked, "So there is still strength. Thank you, Vanessa. This is the best gift of fate." Melissa was driving down the motorway and realized that something had happened to her car. It was still a long way to town. What to do? The car could stall at any minute. She felt that her car was not behaving as usual. It seemed to be fine, but different than it always was. The girl looked at the navigator. It was still 20 kilometers to town, with forest all around. Please, she pleaded, don't glitch, not now. Let's at least get to town, or better yet, home. And then I'll take you straight to the service tomorrow. I promise. Come on, honey, let's drive a little further. But Melissa's hopes were not to be realized. The car drove about 1 kilometer and then stopped. The girl barely had time to pull over to the side of the road. Well, fine, she sighed. Forest evening, no one on the road. She picked up her phone. No connection either. Gentlemen maniacs, where are you? Here I am. The perfect victim, Melissa thought. She tried dialing her fiancé's number, but of course the signal didn't go through. So she sent him a text message, hoping it would be delivered. But again, no luck. So Melissa bit her lip thoughtfully. What to do? Sit here and wait for someone to pass by, or go out herself to get help? But which way to go? Where would the connection start to catch? She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she didn't even notice the man approaching her. He knocked on the glass. Melissa flinched at first, then slowly looked up at him. The stranger waved his hand, urging her to roll down the window. The girl looked him over carefully from head to toe. She also looked back to see his car, which he had parked behind her car. But there wasn't much she could see in the thickening dusk. Finally, Melissa decided she had no choice anyway and rolled down her window. Hello, she nodded, stammering. Hello, girl. My name's Brian. Broken? He inquired. Broke down, Melissa confirmed uncertainly. So were you able to call for help, or is it not picking up a signal? He asked. It's not catching, Melissa admitted. I don't know what to do, Melissa said, confused. The man pulled something out of his pocket and held it out to the girl. What is this? She asked. My papers, he replied. I understand that you're afraid. That's why, well, I don't know. Take a picture of my passport. I just don't know how else to prove I'm a decent person. I don't have phone reception here either, so I suggest you come with me to a place where we can call for a tow truck, and then I'll drive you home. Thank you, Melissa nodded. Here, take your passport back. The photo won't help me in any way. I can't send it to anyone right now, but you seem like a good person to me. Besides, I don't really have a choice anyway. She opened the door and took her papers and a purse from the car. Let's go, she said. Brian, don't you know about cars? Maybe there's nothing wrong with it. And I just did something wrong, the girl asked suddenly. Well, try starting her up, the man suggested. Let's have a listen. Maybe we'll realize what's wrong. It won't start at all. I tried it, Melissa replied. Brian spread his hands. What's your name, by the way? He asked. Melissa, the girl introduced herself. You see, Melissa, I'm not very good with cars either. And it's dark already. I can't see anything. So... Yeah, sure, the girl nodded. She locked her car and they walked together towards Brian's car. Do you know how far it is to the nearest station? She asked. There's some sort of workshop at the entrance to town, he replied. But I don't know how good a job they do there. I can take you to the place where I used to get my car fixed. They do a good job there, and the prices are nice, and it's not much further. Okay, Melissa bit her lip nervously. You'll have to forgive me. It's inconvenient that you have to fuss with me. You probably have various things waiting for you. It's okay, Melissa. I can address you that way, can't I? The girl nodded. Let's talk, the man suggested with a smile, so you won't be so nervous. I'm at Reconnecting. He had to go to the sawmill all the time. I buy materials for my work there. I know the road well, Brian said. And I have 2 small bakeries in town. I used to go to the small factory. They make really good jam there. But arranged for deliveries, Melissa replied. How interesting. You're so skinny and yet you work with bread. How's that? Brian smiled. Yeah, it's not quite clear yet, Melissa admitted. We'll have to take another trip. Or maybe, she added, my broken down car is a sign that I don't need to go there anymore. Well, I don't know. And they also say that obstacles only come in the way of something really good, the man informed her. Brian brought Melissa to the service. They have a tow truck too. Let's make a deal. They'll go pick up your car, fix any problems, and then they'll call you. Melissa nodded. Thank you so much for not giving up and giving me a lift. You really helped me out a lot. Melissa, it's like you're saying goodbye to me, the man smiled. And I'm not going to leave just yet. But are you sure you can explain exactly where the car is parked? He asked. No, admitted the girl. I haven't memorized anything. I probably won't be able to tell you anything. Then let's go. Besides, I promised to take you home. That would already be unnecessary, Melissa replied. I've already taken up a lot of your time. Still, let me walk you home. It would make me feel better, Brian insisted. Melissa smiled embarrassedly. She liked the man's concern. No one had worried about her like this in a long time, and here was a stranger caring so much about her comfort and safety. Brian had made the arrangements for the tow truck and car repairs himself. Melissa merely dictated her phone number. Let's go, he suggested cheerfully as they walked out of the service. What's the address? Just don't say no. It's getting late. By the way, Melissa, can you tell me a secret? What's the name of your bakery? But I wonder. I'd stop by, give it a try. Melissa smiled. How about we switch to you? She suddenly suggested. I agree. Brian nodded. Brian drove Melissa home, and she left him her phone number as promised. I guess I'll see you in a few days, he promised. Just call ahead of time, Melissa asked. I need time to bake a cake for you, and it's sure to be delicious. Melissa said goodbye to her assistant and walked into the entryway. The girl went up to the right floor and opened the door with her key. As soon as she stepped inside, Nicholas immediately looked out of the room. God, finally, Melissa. I've almost lost my mind. It's almost 1:00 in the morning. Where have you been? You're not answering your phone. I thought for sure I'd call the police in a couple more hours. Nicholas, calm down, please, she pressed against the man. Melissa, honey, what's wrong? Where have you been? I went to the settlement, remember, she clarified, to find out about the jam. How could I forget that? He nodded. And my car stalled right on the road in the woods. No phone reception. The man looked at the girl in horror. My girl, how on earth did you manage? You must have been so frightened. Very much so, she nodded. Thank goodness a car stopped. A man gave me a lift to the service. I was so scared to get in his car, but there was no way out. Anyway, my car will be taken away and repaired. They'll call in a few days to pick it up, Melissa finished briefly, and I'm home. Well, that's good. Nicholas could see that he had already calmed down. You're so smart. Totally made it through. Tired, I guess, Nicholas said. Tired, confirmed the girl, and hungry. And I'm hungry, agreed the man. I was so worried while you were away that I couldn't eat a bite. Let's go cook something. How was your day? Melissa felt like if they didn't talk now, she'd fall asleep just walking. Pretty good overall. The flour came in, the butter. I took everything in, checked everything out. Chloe rang tonight. She's going on sick leave. She's got a cold. But I found a replacement for her the day after tomorrow. Thanks, Melissa nodded. What was started? What would I do without you, my helper? Oh yes, Nicholas perked up. Also, the wedding planner called. Says we need to discuss flowers. But here, I'm sorry, Melissa, I didn't get involved. Flowers aren't my area of expertise at all. I said you'd call her back tomorrow yourself. Melissa nodded. Yes, thank you very much. And a couple of hours later, as she fell asleep, Melissa suddenly thought of Brian and smiled involuntarily. The man had an unusually attractive smile. His brown eyes seemed to envelop you with their warmth. Melissa loved Nicholas. They had been together for a long time. He has helped her so much with the business. He knows thoroughly how their bakery works. They make a great couple. And a wedding is the natural outcome of their relationship. But why is there such a sweet tingle in my chest at the thought of Brian? Finally, writing it off to the fatigue and excitement of the day, Melissa fell asleep. In the morning, Melissa drove to work as usual. Nicholas had some business to take care of today, so Melissa had to make her own way to the shop floor. She thought about her car and involuntarily thought about Brian. His man hadn't called yet. Melissa had his phone number, too. She had a terrible urge to dial his number. The shop was already in full swing. As always, the smell of freshly baked bread was delicious. As soon as Melissa appeared, Jennifer, the girl who had been the head pastry chef for several years, rushed over to her. Melissa, I made it up yesterday, she informed her. Melissa knew that Jennifer was an enthusiastic girl. She always had more than one project in the pipeline, so it was necessary to be specific. What did you come up with? Yes, I came up with a recipe for your wedding cake. I want to do something totally unique, and I came up with the whole thing yesterday. Come on, I'll show you around. Jennifer excitedly talked about the filling, but Melissa listened half-heartedly. Melissa, what's going on? She asked. It's like you don't care. I'm telling you about your wedding cake. Melissa nodded. I'm listening, she replied. I'm sorry. It's just that something happened yesterday, and I'm having a hard time coming to my senses. What happened? Jennifer asked immediately. Melissa told her about her adventures last night. Melissa, but it's not pleasant, of course, all of it. But you have a wedding in a week. You've got to pull yourself together somehow. Get your mind right already. It's all just petty problems you don't understand. This man, Brian, who helped me, I think about him all the time. I know you can't, but I do. It's just that things with Nicholas and I have been kind of off lately. I think things are great with you too. You're such a beautiful couple. He loves you and you love him. But don't you think it's just wedding excitement? You're imagining things? No, it doesn't seem that way to me, she objected. Nicholas and I have always had a calm relationship. You know the passion, the falling in love, never happened. You've joked yourself that he and I are like an old married couple. Everything was measured and calm. And you were okay with that, weren't you? Jennifer reminded him. Sure, he's been working for me for almost 3 years now. We've been together that long, and he's not just my deputy. He's put his heart and soul into these bakeries. Melissa sighed. Especially since it doesn't work out with the kids either, and he puts up with it. Never a word of reproach. I thought that's the way it was supposed to be. That Nicholas was the best option for me. But lately we've lost that. He's still always there for me. Seems to always be there to comfort and support. But at the same time, it's like he's gone. He's distanced himself from me. And yesterday with this Brian guy, I never felt like that, you know. He's like I don't know, like my soulmate, like a person I have to have around. It's like an obsession. You know, I think as far as Nicholas is concerned, you're just tired of preparing for the wedding. And especially since you've never argued as much as you have over her. You want a modest wedding. He wants a lavish one. It's clear that you're constantly clashing over little things. And it seems like you don't understand each other that well anymore. Jennifer smiled. Also, you should see this Brian guy again. Whoa, because you were tired and scared yesterday, and he helped you through a difficult situation. So you thought he was a prince on a white horse. And when you see him in a normal setting, all his charm disappears. You'll realize he's a perfectly ordinary man. Melissa nodded. I guess you're right. I was a little nervous last night. So what's up with the cake? That evening she called a taxi again because Nicholas was still busy. She suddenly caught herself thinking that she had no idea what her fiancé had been doing all day today. She paid the cabbie and got out of the car. To Melissa, she heard someone call out to her. The girl looked up and saw Brian walking towards her. Good evening. Evening. What are you doing here? She wondered. We switched to you yesterday, Brian reminded her. Here, take these. He handed her car keys. The car's over there. She's fine. All the faults are fixed. I put more petrol in it, by the way. Melissa was taken aback. Brian, but it wasn't worth it. How much do I owe you for all this? Why did the service call you and not me? Yeah, I'm so embarrassed, Melissa said. I arranged for them to call me myself because I really wanted to see you again. And you don't owe me anything, he smiled, except for a cup of coffee. Why don't we go out? Sit for a while, just talk. I really enjoyed spending time with you yesterday. Melissa sighed. So much for realized he's a regular man. There seems to be absolutely nothing ordinary about Brian. Okay, she accepted the invitation to her own surprise. So what are you so lost in the morning? Jennifer asked. Did you have a fight with Nicholas? No, Nicholas wasn't home last night. I was asleep when he got home. Do you even know where he was? Jennifer asked. Or are you not interested in where your man spends his evenings? Yes, he went to a factory in the neighboring region, negotiating deliveries. It's a long journey, so he arrived late. What bad timing, Melissa spluttered. So what else happened? Brian brought my car to me yesterday. Can you believe he paid for everything? Went to the service and waited for me outside my house with my car. Didn't charge me any money either. Maybe he's a maniac and he's stalking you. Jennifer, what are you talking about? Melissa shook her head dejectedly. He's a good, honest man and so caring. So, girlfriend, he brought you the car. What happened next? Did you thank him, take the keys and go home? Not exactly. He took me to a cafe and we sat there for about 4 hours. And kept talking. Jennifer, I've never had such a good time with anyone. My whole life just turned upside down. I thought I was going to live my whole life with Nicholas and never know what real feelings were. And now you see how it is. What are you trying to cancel the wedding? Melissa sighed and covered her face with her hands. I don't know. I don't understand. It's just that I'm in love, you know. And he has feelings for me too. Melissa sighed. He says he never believed in love at first sight. That he thought it was silly for schoolgirls, but he saw me. Melissa, Jennifer sighed. You don't know him at all. Yes. Look, Jennifer looked at her friend. On the other hand, you have a right to be happy. And more importantly, Nicholas has that right too. If you don't love him anymore, maybe it's more honest to say so. After all, that would make 3 people unhappy at once. Say, Jennifer. Melissa jumped up and started pacing from corner to corner. Tell him what? That he spent so many years with me, raised my business with no expense spared. And now that I'm doing okay? No, it's not even okay. My business is doing just fine. I'm gonna quit. Do you know what that's called? That's betrayal. No. You can't cancel the wedding. Melissa froze. I need to block this Brian's number and forget about him and just get ready for the wedding. Jennifer, just you, please don't say anything to Nicholas, I beg you. I won't, Jennifer sighed. Of course I won't say anything. Melissa was determined. She had indeed blocked Brian's phone number. True, every night before she went to bed, she unblocked his number and looked at the messages on all the social media sites, hoping that he had called or texted her. But she hadn't heard from Brian, which is not surprising, really. I mean, she had told him she was getting married. Melissa realized that it seemed for the best, that it was the right thing to do. But despite that, she was angry with Brian and very nervous. Because of that, she was taking it out on Nicholas over nothing. They had already had several fights. The wedding was only 2 days away when Nicholas couldn't take it anymore. Nicholas, what are you talking about? Melissa said indignantly. Well, it doesn't. Can't you see? The man wondered. We fight all the time over every little thing. And it's not just about the baker. It seems to me that absolutely everything annoys you. Melissa sank into a chair and covered her face with her hands, hiding from the world. She needed a moment to herself. Melissa flashed the urge to tell him everything, to confess, but she quickly brushed it away. To know that confession would only ruin everything. She'd been going to this life, this stability, for too long. She had feelings for Brian, but she didn't know him. It might not work out. And Nicholas is always with her, loving and supportive. Leaving Nicholas is not an option. Nicholas, you forgive me. She looked the man straight in the eyes. It's just that the wedding is just around the corner. I'm very nervous. So I'm taking it out on you over nothing. The girl waved her hands. The man smiled and knelt down in front of her. My good girl. I understand, he replied, just tired too. You know, so anxious for it to be the day after tomorrow and for it to be over already. Me too, Melissa nodded. Me too. On the day of the wedding, Melissa was shaking. The girl was thinking about having to cancel the wedding again. She sat in front of the mirror, watching her hair being done, wondering why she was doing all this. Why hadn't she stopped everything 3 days ago? But then she remembered Nicholas, their conversation. She couldn't betray him, leave him. He was always with her, and she would be with him. So Melissa took a deep breath, ordering herself to calm down. A few hours later, they were married. It was safe to exhale. The deed was done. Doubts no longer plagued her. Melissa tried to relax and take some pleasure in her own wedding. There weren't many guests, just the closest ones. They had gathered at the country estate. Oh, Melissa, Her husband hugged her. I've invited another man to join us. I think we'll feed. We met the day before yesterday out of the blue, and I. Melissa looked at Nicholas in surprise. Met the day before yesterday, and you immediately invited him to the wedding. He's a childhood friend of mine, a close friend. But we haven't seen each other in probably 15 years. And the day before yesterday, when we met, we didn't even have time to talk. So I thought, do you mind? No, I was just surprised. You're not prone to such spontaneous behavior. Well, that makes sense now. Of course, let him come. I think we can safely feed one more person. Jennifer walked over to Melissa. Shall we talk? Her friend asked in a whisper. Let's not, Melissa asked. It's already over. We got married. Now we're going to live, hopefully happily ever after. And Brian? And Brian I'll forget, she replied. Melissa, Melissa, her husband called out to her. Melissa turned around and was literally nose to nose with Brian. I'd like you to meet him, her husband broadcast cheerfully. This is my friend, my classmate. It's been so long since we've seen each other. Melissa felt dizzy and dark in her eyes. Hello, she mumbled. Melissa, are you okay? Nicholas became worried. You're all pale. You don't worry. Jennifer came to her rescue. Melissa just told me she's a little dizzy. It's not like she's eaten anything today. We're going to go to the Kobold to get something to eat, and then we'll talk to you some more. Yes, yes, of course, Nicholas replied. Melissa, maybe I should come with you. No thanks. Melissa had already recovered a little. Is that him? Jennifer asked. Barely had they moved far enough away from the men. Yes, Melissa confirmed. How can that be? They've known each other since they were kids. Can you imagine? What if Brian tells about us knowing each other? Look, but he's not stupid, Jennifer replied. Jennifer continued. You told me 10 minutes ago that it was over. You made your decision, you got married. You're with Nicholas now, so get a grip. You're the bride today. You're the center of attention. Yes, Melissa replied. You're right. She looked at the guests who stood scattered around the table. We should do something, right? Let's go dancing, Melissa said firmly. The girl briskly approached her husband and Brian. Nicholas, I'm sorry I felt bad all of a sudden somehow, but I feel much better now. So I'm Melissa, and it's a pleasure to meet you. And I'm Brian, and it's a pleasure to meet you too. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to steal my husband. Nicholas, let's dance. I'll be fine, Melissa promised, smiling wickedly. Brian, and I have a favor to ask of you. Please invite someone to dance too, or our guests are getting bored. It will do, Brian replied. The bride's wish is law. Melissa and Nicholas left to dance. The girl smiled at her new husband and tried to convince herself that everything was going great. She truly loved him. All in all, the wedding went well. At one point, Brian just disappeared. That's when Melissa felt like she could finally relax. And from there, she had a lot of fun. She and Nicholas didn't get home until late at night. Are you tired? I don't want to get this dress off. But all in all, it's great. It was an awesome wedding, wasn't it? The girl smiled. Awesome. Nicholas agreed. A suggestion, let's move our wedding night to tomorrow. Agreed, Melissa replied, very sleepy. The first few weeks of Melissa's married life passed. At first, it seemed to her that nothing had changed. Then she noticed that Nicholas had become even more caring and attentive than usual. Melissa, I think you'd better not go to work today, he said first thing in the morning. Maybe you should go to the beauty parlor or get a massage. Nicholas asked. Do I look that bad? Melissa wondered. Are you suggesting that I not drive to work today? Yesterday you said you needed to go on holiday. The day before yesterday there was something about a sanatorium. What's going on? Melissa, you look great, Nicholas mused. I didn't want to speak directly. But let's try having a baby again. You know what I've been thinking? You've always worked really hard. There were problems with the business, but we're doing well now. Maybe you should take some time off, get some new emotions, relax. Then we can make this work. Melissa, I suggest you work a little less temporarily, at least for a few months. Melissa bit her lip. Maybe we could try seeking medical help, she suggested. Well, I get it, Nicholas nodded. If it's okay with you, I'd give it a try. Melissa, I love you, and you're enough for me. But I think you should try every possibility before giving up. I agree, the girl nodded. Then we should go to the doctor. Nicholas nodded in agreement. Let's read about the different clinics. We need to pick a good one. Literally a couple of days later, they were already sitting at the doctor's appointment. Well, before we discuss anything, we need to take all the tests. You say you recently got married. Preparing for a wedding is usually a lot of stress. Perhaps the whole process is best put off for a few months. In any case, let's see the results of the tests first, and then we'll discuss further plans. Agreed, Melissa nodded. It had been almost 3 days since she'd had the tests. You're not angry? Nicholas asked at the end of the 3rd day. That I got you involved in all this? No, I want to figure it out too. You're right, we should give it a try. I have another surprise for you, look. Nicholas pulled a large envelope out of his pocket. What's this? The girl wondered. Vacations to a sanatorium for 10 days. Wait, he interrupted Melissa, who tried to object to something. Hear me out. I'm not going. I talked to Jennifer. Nicholas continued. She's willing to keep you company. I'll keep an eye on things here. The business will be under control. You won't have anything to worry about. I first thought of buying a trip to Egypt or some other exotic country. But then I realized that a long flight and a drastic change of climate wouldn't be good for you right now. The doctor's appointment isn't for another fortnight, Melissa reminded him. Agree to it, Nicholas insisted. Okay, the girl agreed. Maybe really, I should get some rest. Thank you for taking such good care of me. Melissa and Jennifer went on holiday. Your husband couldn't have thought of a more boring holiday for us, Jennifer resented. Why do you say that? Let's go to the mountains. I'm sure there's plenty of fun to be had there too. Jennifer sighed. Well, there's nothing to do. I'll have to figure out how to entertain myself. What makes him think you need a holiday anyway? We've been to this clinic. We've decided to try IVF. I've done the tests. And the next appointment isn't for another fortnight. So I wouldn't be nervous and I wouldn't have to wait unnecessarily. Wow, that's a big decision. For some reason, I thought you had already closed that topic. Jennifer frowned. I was under the impression that Nicholas didn't want any more children, but in the sense that he's calmed down, accepted the fact that you can't get pregnant. I thought you were happy for us, Melissa wondered. I am happy. It's just unexpected. You've only been married 2 weeks and the subject came up right away. And I think it's legitimate. We're an official family now. Maybe you're right, Jennifer replied. On the 3rd day of their holiday, Melissa received a phone call from Nicholas. Honey, we have an emergency, he informed her. How could we not have thought this through? What happened? Nicholas, don't scare me, Melissa exclaimed. They came to the bakery to check the counters. You know it's important. The inspection is coming up, and I don't have power of attorney. I need the owner of the premises. Did you talk to him? What do we do now, Nicholas? I'll buy a ticket for the next plane. No, wait, Melissa. I didn't mean to call you. Nicholas cursed. Damn, I didn't mean to worry you. It's just that the test will probably be as early as Wednesday. We won't have time to go back and get everything done. Why don't you go to the notary, get a power of attorney for me? If you get it done today, they'll have the meters changed by tomorrow. Okay, she finally said. I'll figure it out now. There's probably a notary here. So the girl said goodbye to her husband. Is there a handshake? Want to work again? Jennifer frowned unhappily. Are you resting at all? Maybe I should go bake something in the meantime. She grinned. And where are you going to bake? Melissa laughed. I'll go to the mess hall and cry. Maybe they'll let me in, replied her friend. Okay. What did your husband come up with? Oh, it's nothing. Listen, Jennifer, you get some rest. Go get your treatments. I'll be fine on my own. Are you sure? A friend asked. I can come with you. No, Melissa refused. I'll just go to the notary. There's a document that needs to be drawn up. Melissa found the notary just a few streets away from the sanatorium. You'd think Nicholas had chosen this place on purpose. There was no queue, and Melissa was quickly invited into the office. The girl explained the situation. Excuse me, is it possible to draw up a power of attorney somehow, so that he can do these counters, I don't know, take the goods, but that the really important matters are left to me to decide? You don't trust your husband? The notary looked at the girl with interest. It's not that I don't trust him, Melissa replied. It's just that I don't think decisions like this are made spontaneously. I'd like to think it over again. I'd rather do that when I get home. Wise, the notary agreed. Okay, see what we can include in your power of attorney. A couple of hours later, Melissa was already at the express delivery service. She paid the fastest rate and sent her husband a copy of the power of attorney before doing so. Nicholas, I already sent the original, but even the fastest delivery service won't have it until the day after tomorrow. I get it, honey, but that's okay. The important thing is that the power of attorney is already in place. I'll decide the rest. Get some rest. I'm sorry I ruined your whole day. Nicholas called the girl again late at night. Melissa was about to go to bed. Tell me, are you kidding me? Nicholas asked. What's wrong? It's just that I realized today that my spouse doesn't trust me at all. You know, Melissa, it even hurts. You spent so much money for the sake of giving me the right to have the meters enter. Melissa, I just want to understand you. What am I to you, a free servant? Nicholas, stop saying that, please, Melissa interrupted him. Look, decisions like this aren't made spontaneously like this. Let me come back, and we'll have a proper discussion about what to write in this power of attorney. For now, it's just the way it is. I'm just offended that you didn't even want to talk to me. You just went straight for me. What kind of relationship do we have? The girl asked. It's just that I wanted my wife to trust me more. Especially since I'm proven to her year after year that I'm a great employee and more concerned about the well-being of her firm than anyone else. Melissa, I put my heart and soul into your bakery. I've worked hard and spared no effort or time. I know, Nicholas, and I really appreciate it, I really do. And I should have made a power of attorney for you a long time ago. It's just that I want us to talk things over together. Maybe even divide up our responsibilities a little differently. I'm sorry, Nicholas asked. Something about reading that piece of paper made me feel so hurt. It seemed like you didn't appreciate what I was doing at all. I do, Nicholas. I appreciate it all very much. Okay, her husband sighed. You forgive me again. And it's time for you to rest now. Good night. For the rest of the week, Melissa and her husband never called again. They talked every day, of course, but they both preferred to do it by correspondence. The girl had never had such a serious argument with Nicholas before, and she had no idea what awaited her when she returned home. On the last day of their holiday, Melissa and Jennifer decided to go out into the city and have dinner in some restaurant. They found a place with a nice view beforehand and made a reservation. Feel like going home? Jennifer asked. Very much. I miss work, don't you? Jennifer nodded and laughed. Melissa's phone rang. Nicholas, Jennifer asked. Whereupon Melissa glanced at the screen and saw a completely different name there. Yes, she answered. Jen, he and I haven't spoken in so many days. You don't take offense, I'm going to step away for a bit. Brian, hello. I didn't expect you to call me. Hello, Melissa. I think we've moved on to you. Good, the girl nodded. I didn't expect you to call me. Actually, I've been thinking about whether or not to call for a while now. And then I ran into Nicholas today and decided I should call. You're coming back from holiday tomorrow. You even know I've been on holiday, the girl marveled. Nicholas did say, so tomorrow what time can I meet you and drive you home? We need to talk. It's really important. Is it? It took me a long time to decide to have this conversation. I didn't know if I even had the right, if I should get involved. Anyway, please, let's talk and as soon as possible. If it's for tomorrow, I'll be back in the morning. My husband will be at work. I'll drop my stuff off at home and write. Okay? Melissa offered. I'll be waiting, Brian replied. Thanks for saying yes. Melissa turned back to her friend. Did you make up? Jennifer asked. We didn't really seem to be fighting, replied Melissa. We just didn't understand each other. So, is he coming to meet us tomorrow? No, he can't. She shook her head negatively. He has an important work meeting. So the next day, Melissa and Jennifer returned home from the airport. They had driven themselves. Nicholas really didn't meet them. Melissa was disappointed. She thought her husband would still cancel and come to pick her up. After all, they hadn't seen each other for 10 days. She went up to their flat, left her suitcase in the hallway, and went into the kitchen. Everywhere was in order. The girl opened the fridge. Inside she found a pot of soup and a pan of cutlets. Melissa smiled in surprise. What a caring and thoughtful husband she had. No, she had known before that Nicholas was a good cook, but he hadn't been particularly fond of it before. Melissa pulled out her phone and dialed Nicholas's number. She had already called him from the airport. He knew she was in town and asked her to call again when she got home. But this time no one answered the phone. Apparently, Nicholas' negotiations weren't over yet. Melissa decided that she should take advantage of her free time and call Brian. After all, she had promised. The girl really hoped that the man was not going to confess his feelings to her, because already in their relationship, everything was extremely complicated. They agreed to meet in the nearest park in half an hour. Melissa only had time to change her clothes and ran straight to the meeting. You just flew in recently, didn't you? Brian remarked. I thought we were meeting later. You must be really tired. And if you want to, how about a coffee shop? No, thanks. Brian, why don't you tell me what you were going to tell me? Please. I don't have that much time. And to be honest, there's still a lot to do. The man sighed heavily. I want to apologize straight away, he pronounced, for going to hurt you. I really weighed the pros and cons 100 times, but I figured you should still know. What is it? You're scaring me. Nicholas has a second family. What? Melissa stared at the man in shock. A family. You must be confused about something. There's just no such thing. Let me tell you, Brian said, squeezing her hands. Listen to me. Okay, Melissa replied, stammering. Just don't touch me. Tell me. I live on Maple Street in Building 37. I recently moved there, bought a new flat, and just 2 days before your wedding, I ran into Nicholas there. He was loading stuff into his car, dishes, books. I noticed him because I had just been in a similar situation myself, and then I saw that he was my mate. I came over and we got to talking. There was a girl and a boy of about 5 with Nicholas. I naturally assumed it was his family. but he dismissed it and said he was just helping them. See, he was just helping out. Melissa seized on his last words. I would have thought so too, but as I was leaving, I heard the boy call Nicholas Daddy. Melissa was silent for a long time. I don't know what to tell you to that. Maybe you heard it. Maybe the boy was calling someone else, and not Nicholas. And why didn't you say anything to me before the wedding, or at the wedding? Melissa, well, imagine it. I see my old mate with his family. No surprise to me at all about the situation. He invited me to the wedding, of course. Well, there could be a lot of possibilities here. Melissa nodded her head in agreement. Well, yes, that's understandable, she replied. And when I saw you, I was pretty confused. It's not like I didn't know you were going to be Nicholas' fiancée. And then, there was always the option that that girl was his ex-wife, and you know. Anyway, I tried to find out from Nicholas that day at the wedding, but he just brushed me off and then avoided me. If I had seen some other girl at the wedding instead of you, I probably would have just put the whole thing out of my mind. Brian smiled warmly at the girl. I really liked you. Well, that's no secret to you, of course. Melissa only sighed sadly. Thank you, of course, she replied. But I know it's not my feelings you're worried about right now. Brian nodded. Anyway, after your wedding, I decided to figure things out on my own. It didn't turn out to be difficult. This girl, her name is Chris, by the way, remembered me. She saw me talking to Nicholas that day. Anyway, at first we just said hello. I remembered what time she picked up her son from daycare, and I tried to run into her more often. Then I was somehow surprised that she was the only one picking up the child, and that I didn't see Nicholas at all. Anyway, one evening I got lucky. Chris was coming home with some large bags. I offered to help. She said yes. We got to talking. And what did she tell you? Melissa asked. She knows about me, but for one thing, she confirmed that she and Nicholas are family. So yeah, she probably knows about you. She said that Nicholas has a difficult project, both personal and work, and that it's hard for her alone, that it's hard to wait. But she supports him completely and believes everything will be okay. Melissa lowered her head dejectedly. Okay, she nodded. Finally having a baby with him I can understand. I couldn't give birth, but how old is the boy? You said he's already in daycare? Yes, he's 5. I asked Chris, have they really been living all these years without Nicholas' help? She said it was complicated, and that he never left, was there for them all the time. God been there for me the whole time. God, I can't believe he's been deceiving me for so many years. Tell me, how could I have been so inconsiderate? How did I manage not to notice anything? I don't know, Melissa. There are 2 possibilities here. Either you loved him too much and didn't pay attention to his flaws, or... Brian hesitated. I didn't love him at all and didn't care about him or his life, Melissa finished for him. Melissa was silent for a long time. Isn't there a third option? She finally asked. I don't know, Brian shrugged. How did you 2 meet in the first place? I was just starting my business at the time. Melissa began to recount. I opened my first little bakery. It was very difficult for me. Once my bakery started generating revenue, I hired my first employee right away. It was difficult to find a person because I was looking for a loader, a storekeeper, and many others. And Nicholas agreed right away and proved himself to be a great employee. I could rely on him for everything. And over the years we got used to being together all the time. I thought he was the only person I could trust completely. And I didn't care about him. I just thought things had been clear between us for a long time. But you don't love Nicholas? Brian asked. I got used to him. Melissa nodded. I was even embarrassed sometimes because he always said he loved me very much. It sounds like Nicholas managed you well, Brian remarked. Except why? He and I used to talk a few years ago about making him an equal partner in the business, that he'd buy out my share. But I don't know why I kept putting it off. It's probably my own fault. I created this situation. He's been with me for so many years helping me, Melissa sighed. I want to remind you that he's had a second family for a long time too. So he's been cheating on you for years, Brian said. Melissa shuddered. What am I supposed to do now? She asked. I don't know, Brian replied, but I'm willing to help you. I wish I understood. Help with what? I'm so clueless about what I should do, Melissa sighed. While I was on holiday, Nicholas asked me to make a power of attorney. And did you make one? Yes, Melissa nodded, but not the kind he wanted. I only gave him authority to do certain things, seal meters, take delivery of goods. Anyway, there's nothing serious in the power of attorney. And how did he react? We had a fight. He accused me of mistrust. It turns out he was right. I didn't trust him. I don't know why. But it turns out you were right not to trust him in the end, Brian remarked. I'm sorry, but I think you need a divorce. You don't have anything in common yet. Am I right? Brian said. Yes, replied Melissa, the business is mine, and we live in his flat. Do you have a place to live? No, Melissa replied, not right now, but I'll get myself something. We have to move out. I realize you can't do that. The girl wrapped her arms around her shoulders. I'm so scared, she admitted. You have no idea how much doubt I had before the wedding. I almost canceled it twice. So you felt something? Suspected? I didn't feel anything. I was in love with you. That's why I wanted to, Melissa waved her hand hopelessly. What did you say? He asked. You fell in love with me. I'm sorry, Brian. That's not what I meant. Let's talk about this later. Okay, but let me help you out. Remember I told you I recently moved into a bigger flat? I remember, Melissa replied. Anyway, my old flat didn't go anywhere. I didn't sell it. No one lives there now. Move in there for now. I'll help you move your stuff. I think you should move in first and then talk to your husband. It's not really fair, but it's safer. Nicholas has done a great deal to take over your business. I don't think he'll just let you go. Melissa glanced at her watch. You're right, and I need to run home right away. I'll pretend everything's fine tonight, and then tomorrow, when he leaves for work, I'll pack as much as I can in time. Can you come over? Yeah, anytime. Just give me a call, Melissa. Don't worry too much. It'll all work out. Brian, I'm sorry I took it out on you like that. It'll be fine. I was the one who offered to help. Melissa returned home. Her husband arrived literally 15 minutes later. Luckily, the girl had time to change into her home clothes and get comfortable on the couch. You have prepared so much, she exclaimed, coming out to her husband. However, now she wasn't sure if it was her husband who had cooked. It feels so good. I haven't eaten. I've been waiting for you, Melissa said. No kidding, Nicholas put his arm around her. But you can't do that. You and I agreed that you would think of yourself first. I am thinking, she replied. I didn't feel like eating at all. I wanted to talk to you. I really missed you, Nicholas smiled. How was your rest? Nicholas listened patiently to his wife's story. Melissa was watching him closely now. She saw that he was distracted a couple of times, diving somewhere into his own thoughts. He was clearly not interested in what she was telling him, but Nicholas held on. Nicholas, you're falling asleep. Shall we go to bed? She suggested. Yes, let's get tucked in already. I think we need to discuss the power of attorney situation. We will, Melissa smiled. We'll talk it over tomorrow. I'll go to the shop and then straight to the bakeries themselves. I want to reevaluate everything we do and think about how to divide our responsibilities properly. Will you come with me? I have a lot of work to do tomorrow. You know I still haven't found suitable suppliers of flour, sugar. Yes, and the quality of the butter is not too satisfactory to me. I'm going to the country again tomorrow. I'll probably be back by nightfall. Let's go to the notary the day after tomorrow. That's a great idea, Melissa approved. We'll do that. But we'll have to coordinate it somehow. Before we go to the notary, you'll draw up your version of the power of attorney. I'll do mine and we'll compare notes. Thank you, Melissa, her husband hugged her. You're such a smart girl. I love you so much. Melissa squirmed and nodded. I'm very lucky to have you, she replied. The next day, first thing in the morning, Melissa drove to work. She kept feeling like she was missing something really important, but there was no way she could figure out what. What's up? Jennifer asked. It's hard to get into work after a holiday. How was your husband? He must have been very happy to have you back. Why? Melissa nodded slowly. Yeah, he was glad. Look, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about work. I've been gone a whole 10 days after all. Gotta check things out, see how things are going, Melissa said. I recognize, my friend. You can't be out of work. You're newlyweds and you're acting like, Jennifer replied. Melissa disappeared into her office and immediately dialed Brian's number. You were right yesterday, she said. Nicholas brought up the arrangement right away. I'm at work right now. I need about an hour. I want to check on a few things. Then I'll go straight to packing. He said he'll be gone all day. I'll drive over to your house. I'll meet you there in an hour, Brian replied. Thank you so much for helping, the girl replied. She checked the accounts, making sure that if Nicholas was stealing anything, it wasn't on a large scale. Then, of course, she would need to check everything exactly. But for now, Melissa called the accountant. Mrs. Beatrice, will you please coordinate all payments with me now? Even the smallest ones. My husband no longer handles the payment issues. Okay, Melissa, I understand. But my husband doesn't need to talk about it yet. He and I will talk it over later. Just get through today. Please. Melissa finished her business and left the office. Jennifer, she called out to her friend. Hold on, Jennifer spoke into the phone. Yes, Chris, that's right. I'll call you back. Melissa listened. It didn't seem like it to her. Jennifer had just called out Chris' name. Melissa, what did you want? Jennifer asked. Melissa blinked slowly. Sorry, I'm all in my own thoughts today. I can't seem to get myself together properly. Jennifer, sorry for the indiscreet question. Who were you talking to? My cousin, Jennifer looked at her friend perplexed. Yes, I remember. Her name is Chris. She has a son, right? And I think she's raising him all by herself. Yeah, she's got a bad man. She's been torturing herself over him for years, Jennifer replied. Melissa curled her lips. She could barely contain her emotions. A friend, a best friend. She just couldn't help but know that her cousin's lover was Nicholas. So she had kept quiet for so many years, and maybe even supported her sister. But what if she's the one who introduced them? Doesn't your sister want to work for us? Melissa grinned. Maybe she'd feel better then. Jennifer looked at her friend strangely. Well, I'll ask, I guess. But she didn't seem to be looking for a job. Okay, Melissa replied. I'm off. I probably won't be back tonight. I'll need to talk to you tomorrow. Brian was waiting for Melissa outside the house. What's wrong? He asked immediately. You're not wearing your face. How did you even get here? Melissa waved her hand. If I start talking now, I'll probably burst into tears and won't be able to stop. They went up to the flat. Thankfully, Nicholas wasn't there. Melissa quickly threw the first thing she could find into her suitcase. Brian hadn't come to her empty-handed. He had brought a suitcase and 2 bags. And you're very thoughtful. The girl smiled slightly. I'm lucky to have you. The girl stuffed all the bags with things. I'll pick up the rest after the divorce, she decided. Brian carried all of the girl's things to the car. Why don't you leave your car here for now? He suggested. You're so pale. You shouldn't be driving. Let me at least move it a couple of yards away, Melissa replied. I don't want Nicholas to know where my car is. Brian brought the girl back to his flat. There you go. After a little tour, he said, here are the keys. Have you got your phone? I bought you some more food. Over there in the bags, there's cereal, butter, salt, flour. Basically, what you'll need for the first time. But it's not all there, of course. We still have to go to the shop. If you want, we can do it now. You don't have a car. No, Melissa replied. Later, everything later. Did you happen to buy any brews? The girl asked. I'd really like some tea. And to catch my breath in general, to think. I have, replied the man. Let me put the kettle on. Will you tell me what happened? I'll tell you, Melissa replied. When you said the name Chris, I thought I'd heard it somewhere before. So Brian asked, do you know her? Indirectly, replied the girl. She's my best friend's cousin, the same one who works for me. So tomorrow, she sighed, I just don't know how I'm going to get through the day. You'll get through it. Nicholas started calling Melissa around 10 p.m. She immediately sent him a text saying she was fine. She wouldn't be coming overnight, but would be at work tomorrow after 11 and would explain everything. Melissa decided that she'd better work things out with her husband and her friend there. There would be other people there after all. Melissa didn't know why, but she was afraid of Nicholas. She filed for divorce this morning. She imagined how ridiculous it looked, just married and divorced. They couldn't live together just to keep people from thinking badly of them. Melissa arrived at work in a depressed mood. For the first time in her life, she opened the door of her own shop with this fear. Nicholas was already there. Nicholas jumped out to meet his wife. "Were you out of your mind? Where have you been? Didn't you come to spend the night? You think I didn't notice your things were gone? Melissa, you're my wife, and you're acting." "Oh, your wife?" Melissa replied. "Let's not yell. There are people around here. Let's go to the study. We'll talk there." Hi, Jennifer walked up to them. "Are you all right?" Nicholas said, "You haven't been home overnight." "I'm fine," Melissa replied. "Come by my place a little later today, please. We'll sign the termination papers and you can pick up your paycheck." "What?" Jennifer looked at her friend perplexed. "I don't understand." "And I'll explain," she replied. "First to Nicholas and then to you. You just wait." "You'd think I'd have a choice," she replied. Nicholas entered the office following Melissa. "Well, I think I've got it all figured out," he grinned. "Yeah," Melissa arched her eyebrows. "And what did you realize?" "You're not interested in me anymore," he replied. "You used me to the fullest. Boosted your business, promoted yourself. Now you're firmly on your feet. That's it. You don't need a husband anymore. You went to the sanatorium on purpose and left me in charge. Didn't you like it? Then you don't like me as a manager." Melissa silently applauded her husband. "And you're an artist," she said finally. "Well prepared. Of course you've had all night to think about it. And your second wife, your son, they have nothing to do with this situation, do they?" she asked. Nicholas clearly hadn't expected Melissa to know about his second family. The man's eyes went wide. So Melissa saw a flicker of panic on his face, but he quickly pulled himself together. "Melissa, it's not what you think." "Good," she nodded. "Tell me how it really is." "Yes, I have a son, but me and his mother, we're not in a relationship. I just help her out with money. I see the boy sometimes too, very rarely." "Yeah, so how did your son come into the world?" she grinned. "But I don't hide it. I made a mistake. I made a mistake once. I was drunk, and that's what happened. I wanted her to have an abortion, and I only found out she'd given birth when the baby was a year old." Melissa shrugged her shoulders. "Please," the girl pleaded, "stop it. It sounds so awful. I don't know if you're telling the truth or not. I don't even want to hear it. I don't want to think of you as that kind of person, Nicholas." Melissa shook her head. "You lied to me all the time. Our life, everything I valued, everything I believed in, all lies. Oh, I can't be with a man like that. You're fired. We don't work together anymore. I filed for divorce this morning. I will now alert all employees that they are to report to me immediately if they see you on our shop floor or in the bakery." Nicholas looked at his wife for a long moment. "How did you know?" he finally asked. Jennifer couldn't stand it. "She's been threatening to tell me for a long time." Melissa grinned. "No, your accomplice didn't tell me anything. I don't think she would ever tell me. She was just scaring you. After all, she couldn't help but know what betrayal is. I can't forgive." Melissa brushed away the tears that had come. "You've robbed me of two good employees, my best friend and my husband. But just explain to me why I wasted so many years on your business." "I never said a word to you, Melissa. I never denied you anything. I was just there for you, always working, always working. If you'd agreed to make me co-owner 5 years ago, things would have been easier. The two of us could have run the bakery and I would have told you the truth, that I don't never have. I'd have gone to Chris, and you'd have found another man a long time ago and been on your own. But no, you're not happy with that. The business is all yours." Melissa sighed bitterly. "But I told you right away that this was my baby, that I wouldn't give my bakeries to anyone. But Nicholas, it's not like I kept you around or forced you to work for me. I've offered you several times to start your own business. I was willing to help you even financially, but you always refused." The man grinned. "Of course. First I'd slave for you, and then I'd have to start all over again. Why all of a sudden?" Because of you, my favorite woman has suffered for so many years. Chris has to wait all the time. Chris is your fool because she believes you, Melissa grinned. You don't love her. If you don't do that to the ones you love. And I was a fool because I believed you. But I don't anymore. Get out of here and don't come near my business or me again. I'm not giving you a divorce that easy. We're going to divorce through the courts. I'll get my share. Try me, Melissa replied. Her husband was already at the door when he suddenly stopped again. You never told me how you found out about Chris, he reminded. Is it that important? Melissa asked tiredly. A terrible apathy suddenly came over her. She was giving all her energy to talking to her husband. Your friend said, she replied. Apparently they're sick of you playing with two women at once. Who exactly said that? Ask them yourself, Melissa replied. Go away, Nicholas, or I'll call the police. The man slammed the door angrily and sprinted out of the office. Melissa's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and smiled slightly. Hi. You sure have a voice, Brian muttered. You okay? Need any help? I filed for divorce. Talked to my husband. He's got his heart set on going to court for now. We'll see what happens next. Still need to talk to Jennifer, Melissa reported. Jennifer is a friend? Brian asked. Ex-girlfriend, replied Melissa. Melissa, can I come over in about 40 minutes? I have a conversation to have with you, and then I want to take you to lunch to take your mind off things for a bit. A conversation? Melissa asked. A good one, an important one, not a bad one, replied the man. I know it's really hard for you right now. Hang in there. Thanks, the girl sighed. I'm waiting for you then. Melissa just sat in the silence of her office for a few minutes and then went to find Jennifer. Did you talk to Nicholas? She asked her former friend. Do you know what this is about? Melissa. Jennifer looked up at her with guilty eyes. I didn't mean to, really. I'm sorry if you can. Yeah, I'm not the one who brought them together. You don't think I did. They met without me somehow. Chris tracked him down on purpose. It's my fault, of course, for admiring Nicholas and your relationship so much, telling her so much. So she got jealous. And it wasn't Nicholas's fault either. She seduced him. Cool. It wasn't everyone's fault and everyone lied to me. And their son, by the way, is 5 years old. Did it never once occur to you in 5 years that it might hurt me too? That I was living a lie all the time? No, it was okay for you to look me in the eye every day, to listen to me prepare for my wedding. Remember when you told me about Brian? I told you that you should cancel, that you should tell Nicholas the truth, that you shouldn't marry him. I wanted you to leave him, to start a new life. Jennifer. That was a month ago. Melissa sighed tiredly. You had plenty of opportunities to tell me the truth before that, but you chose to keep quiet. Have pity on me. I don't have the energy to listen to any more of your excuses today. Sign all the papers and leave. I agree to fire you on your own recognizance. And who will work in my place? Jennifer grinned. Yeah, your whole lauded bakery will fall apart without me. Melissa grinned. You're forgetting the fact, she replied, that I'm not a bad technologist either. After Jennifer left, Melissa contacted her accountant. There will need to be a full audit, she said. I already realized yesterday that you suspected your husband of something, so I started an audit. I always check the accounts thoroughly, and I'm sure there are no errors in the internal records. But recently your husband changed oil suppliers, and the bills went up significantly. I was surprised at the time, and he said the quality of the new oil was much better. Today, forgive me for being amateurish, I called the new suppliers, introduced myself as a potential new customer, and asked them to invoice me for 50 liters of oil. Well, they charged me a lower price. Looks like Nicholas was working on kickbacks. Perfect, Melissa sighed. Now it turns out we need to check all the suppliers. That's easy. And in doing so, we don't have someone to do Nicholas' current job. Great. Melissa was very frustrated. If she could handle production on her own, everything else. So there was a knock on the door. Yeah, hi. Brian peeked into the office. How are you doing in here? Still alive? Barely, Melissa sighed. Come on in. Do you want coffee? Only with fresh pastries, he smiled broadly. You smell mind-blowing in here. Following Brian, another man entered the office. To meet Tom, a close friend of mine. Let's talk, Melissa replied, still not quite sure what was going on. This is my resume, he informed her, due to life circumstances. I'm looking for a job, and Brian said I might be a good fit. Melissa looked at Tom's resume. His track record was impressive. Can I ask? She finally tore herself away from the resume. The man nodded. That's what I'm here for. When your last place of employment was with a very large company, and as far as I know, the pay there is excellent. Why did you quit? My son got sick. Once a week, sometimes a little more often, sometimes less often, I have to take him to the hospital during the day, which means taking a few hours off work. I could work that time earlier or later, but you see, my current firm is not happy with the situation. I need money for my son's treatment, and I need a job where I can schedule my own hours. Melissa, I don't know your middle name. Just Melissa. I can stay late until 10:11. If I understand, the girl nodded. Tom, let's give it a try. I don't care at all how much time you spend at work. All that matters to me is that the job gets done, and I'm sure we can adjust to your son's treatment schedule. Brian, the girl smiled slightly at the man. Thank you so much for that. You are simply my savior. Come on, I'll treat you to something delicious. I need to talk to you. Am I coming to work or home? He asked. Home, Melissa replied. I'll be home around 7. Brian knew that the girl would soon be facing a court hearing. Nicholas refused to divorce for nothing, and yet he had filed for property division. How are you doing? Brian asked. Barely Melissa opened the door. Nervous a lot, she nodded. Can't find a place to be. What do you smell so good? Immediately the man smelled it. It's a pie from a new recipe I baked. I want to try to sell it at the bakery. You're the first to taste it. I'll take it to the guys at the shop. Tom says this is his most delicious workplace. I keep forgetting to ask you, how do you two work together? Brian said. I know from him that he's pleased. Has thanked me 100 times already. I'm pleased too. In fact, he works even better than Nicholas. Doesn't argue, doesn't come up with any complicated schemes. Everything is quick and clear. Well, I'm just glad. Brian, tell me everything will be okay tomorrow, Melissa suddenly pleaded. Of course it will be, he marveled. Melissa, we've discussed this 100 times, both the two of us and the lawyer. The bakeries are yours. He was just working for you under an employment contract. You made no promises to him. But he's still my husband. Yes, only he married you because he wanted to take over your business. Calm down and treat me to your wonderful pie. Brian, I actually didn't just want to talk about the trial, she remembered. Yeah? Brian was surprised. I thought you couldn't think of anything else today. Did something else happen? I've been living in your flat for over a month now and I haven't paid you a penny. You can't do that. I've talked to a realtor, looked at a few flats, but to tell you the truth, they're all much worse than yours. And I love it here. I feel totally at peace here. Anyway, Brian, please let you start charging me rent. Melissa, what are you talking about? Well, I can't just live here for free. I keep feeling like it's wrong. Melissa, I wanted to talk to you about this after court. Thought you needed some time. But since you're putting me in this situation, let's talk about it today. About what? The girl wondered. The rent, I'm not going to charge you. Well, Brian, Melissa began to object. You just don't understand. Let me finish, Brian pleaded. I'm not pressuring you. I understand divorce isn't easy. You're worried about your bakeries. But the way I felt about you when I first saw you hasn't gone anywhere. And I know you still have those feelings, too. I'm just waiting for the right time for you to let it all go a little bit and be ready to get on with your life. So, first of all, my future girlfriend needs to live in a nice and safe place. Secondly, there's no way I'm charging her rent. So just settle down and live here. There is, however, one more option. What's that? Melissa asked, biting her lip. You could move into the flat where I live now. And where are you going? Melissa didn't understand. Brian bowed his head, waiting for her to understand. Aha, Melissa finally stretched out. No, I'm sorry. I'm not ready for that yet. The next day in the courtroom, the girl was very nervous. She could feel her voice shaking as she answered the judge's questions. Nicholas, on the other hand, was very aggressive. He was snapping, several times started shouting at Melissa and even at the judge. Of course, this played a role. The divorce went through and the bakeries were left to Melissa. Mrs. Vanessa, the girl hugged her lawyer. You've helped me so much. Melissa, Will, you and I have discussed 1,000 times that this is exactly how it was going to be. You did good, you held up well, even though you were nervous. I'll appeal later. Nicholas flew up to them. You're not just going to get rid of me like that. Melissa sighed convulsively and looked at Mrs. Vanessa. She only shook her head negatively. The decision here is unequivocal. You have nothing to worry about. You don't even have to go to future trials if there are any. Melissa, forget this story and be happy. After leaving the courthouse, Melissa wandered the streets for almost 2 hours and then remembered that her phone was lying switched off in her bag and she hadn't told anyone how the trial had ended. She hurriedly removed it from her purse. Sure enough, there were missed calls from colleagues, parents, and as many as 5 from Brian. He was the first one the girl called. Finally, he answered instantly. Melissa, I almost lost my mind. Were you in court that long? No, it ended 2 hours ago. I was out for a walk. You should have at least let me know you were okay. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Oh, how did it go? Great. Melissa smiled. I'm not married anymore. He wasn't able to sue me out of the bakery. So I'm really, really glad. I'm glad too. Listen, Melissa, you probably got a call from work, didn't you? They did, she confirmed. I'm the one who put everyone on edge. I'm sorry. I was worried. Nice to meet you, Melissa said. Listen, as your future girlfriend, I wanted to invite you over for a celebratory dinner tonight. Will you come? I'd love to, Brian replied, just in time to discuss the coming of that very future. Voices could be heard outside the open kitchen door. AA was quietly coming down the stairs. When she woke up, she was thirsty. The woman was surprised to find that her husband was not in bed with her. The clock showed the 3rd hour of the night. Where could he have gone at such a time? She thought. There was always a jug of clean water on the table next to the bed, but yesterday she forgot to fill it. We'll have to go down to the kitchen. Alien slipped her feet into her slippers and went out into the hallway. Walking down the stairs of their big house, she realized that George was in the kitchen and talking quietly with his mother about something. Her mother-in-law lived with them, but before Alien did not notice that her husband and mother-in-law liked to chat at night. She went quietly to the door. You should have left her a long time ago. Her mother-in-law's voice sounded like the hiss of a cobra. Mom, stop it. I love Alien, George spoke in a whisper. But even with the door ajar, you could hear that he was annoyed. You don't understand, son. I'm taking care of you. I told you right away, don't marry that fool. With your money, with your position, you could have found a better wife. From a normal family. No, Mom. I hate to hear that. George even raised his voice a little. If you remember when I married Alien, I didn't have any position. Well, I'm sorry. At least I raised you all my life. Put my whole soul into you, worked 2 jobs to give you a decent education so that you could choose a better path in life. Thank you. The best thank you for me is my grandson. And you're depriving me of the opportunity to be a grandmother. Mom, you know, Alien and I have tried to have a child many times, but ... In general, if you don't talk to her yourself, file for divorce and kick her out of the house. I will tell Alien everything myself. I will tell you that you have another family. Her mother-in-law's voice sounded resolute, but Alien didn't pay attention to it now. She only heard one thing: another family, another family, another family. The woman almost screamed, her mouth hanging open. She turned around and ran up the stairs to the bedroom. What she heard that night was a terrible discovery for her. If what Anne says is true, then it turns out that George is deceiving her. And how many years does it last? How long has he been living with 2 families? No, it was impossible to believe it. From the first day they met, they loved and cared for each other. And my husband never even offended Alien with a word. Hundreds of small hammers were pounding in his temples. Alien really wanted to wake up. She wanted it all to be some kind of stupid dream, a nightmare that would disappear as soon as she opened her eyes. But it wasn't a dream. She heard her mother-in-law talking to her husband about George having another family. This can't be happening. 10 years ago, Alien and George met at a party, where the girl was invited by her friend Jane. They studied at hairdressing courses together and have already interned at one of the beauty salons. It turned out that her boyfriend's friend, the same George, was throwing a birthday party. It was there that the young people saw each other for the first time. But before that, Jane had been trying to persuade her friend to go to the party for a very long time. "There's nothing for me to wear there," sighed Alien. "Oh, that's not a problem," Jane smiled, opening the closet. Jane began to take out hangers with dresses, blouses, and skirts from the closet. "Choose what you want and can. Then don't even return it," she suggested. "Try on the one that suits you best," Jane said, applying the dress to the alien. "And this turquoise one with sand will be good for you," Jane claimed, helping her friend try on a dress. "Oh, what are you? I hardly wear them," Alien objected, looking at the white high-heeled shoes. "Put it on," insisted Jane, putting the shoes in front of her friend. "You look great, Alien," Alex said, looking at the girl through the rearview mirror. "I can't wait to drink champagne and dance," Jane supported him. "Well, will we make it?" Jane was indignant as they drove down the street. Alex, the leading car. "Calm down, of course we'll make it, girls." Alien drove and looked out the window at the quiet night area and the lanterns illuminating the dark streets, thinking about how beautiful the city is at night. What awaits her at this party? She didn't know, so she was worried. After taking the elevator to the 10th floor, they immediately heard loud music and cheerful voices. Alex rang the bell next to the front door. No one opened it. "It's no use. No one will hear the bell," he said, and pulled the door. It turned out to be open. The trio entered the hallway, and Alien realized that she found herself in some other world unknown to her. It was a very large apartment, well furnished with expensive furniture. Colored lights ran across the ceiling in the living room, and girls and boys danced under them. Noticing the guests, the tall, stately host of the party rushed to them. Finally, the birthday boy hugged his friend. "I thought you weren't coming," Dottie greeted Jane, and she pushed Alien forward. "Let's get acquainted. George. This is an alien. She's my best friend. That's the kind of girl." Jane gave a thumbs up. "Very nice," said the guy, holding out his hand. "I'm George. Come on in, join us. Don't be shy about anything or anyone. In general, open up, guys." Alien noted that the audience at this party is very interesting. The girls in beautiful outfits behaved confidently and easily. They danced and had fun. They were not shy of anyone. The guys supported the girls. There were plates of snacks on the table and even on the windowsills. There were bottles of wine and stronger drinks everywhere. Jane and Alex left Alien, rushing to their friends. They knew almost everyone here. And Alien felt awkward. Suddenly, someone handed her a glass. "Will you have a drink?" It was George. The girl took the glass in her hands. In general, she rarely drank, but then, apparently out of excitement, she drank wine. It tasted good, moderately sweet, and fruity. "I see you're bored. Why aren't you dancing?" the birthday boy asked. "It's a little awkward." "I don't know anyone here," Alien replied timidly. "Do you want me to introduce you?" "Don't. Inconvenient." "But then look. This girl with long hair is Helen. We study together. My childhood friend eats something there all the time. We went to the same kindergarten, can you imagine? And we're still friends. Friends are sitting on the couch and girls are lighting up there. Do you remember?" Alien nodded, although she still couldn't remember all the names at once. "Don't be shy. We have a good company, all our own." George served her a canapé with cheese and olives. "I'll try. Can I go out on the balcony to get some air?" the girl asked. "Of course. It's really stuffy in here." He led the alien to a large loggia. From the 10th floor of the high-rise building, there was a wonderful view of the city, shining with lights. A light wind blew, bringing a breath of fresh air. The wine was slightly dizzying. Slow music came from the room. "Come on, let's dance." George extended his hand to the alien. The girl turned around and saw that Jane and Alex were dancing, clinging to each other. For some reason, she also wanted to dance. George turned out to be a gallant, strong guy. He moved very well. Dancing with him, Alien felt more confident among unfamiliar guys. "Where do you study?" the guy asked. "At a hairdressing course," replied Alien. "Will you make people beautiful?" "Something like that." Since childhood, Alien wanted to work in a barber shop like her mother. Therefore, after graduation from the orphanage, there was no choice for her. "And you?" "I'm in my 5th year," George replied, smiling. "I'll be a journalist. All my life I have dreamed of traveling around the country and showing people what is happening in different regions. I want to work in the news." "Great. It's a great profession." Alien supported him. "You're no worse off." George smiled even wider. "Can you imagine if there were no hairdressers, how terrible the correspondents would look on TV?" They laughed. Alien has become so easy with this simple and very attractive guy. After a few hours, the guys began to disperse. Alex called a taxi, leaving his car near George's house. Saying goodbye, the birthday boy asked Aliona for a phone number. "Can I call you sometime?" he asked. "Call me." Alien smiled. She was very tired, but she was glad that her friend was able to persuade her to go to visit. In the taxi, smiling mysteriously, Jane looked at the alien. "But George liked you." She poked her friend lightly in the side. "I haven't left your side all evening." "Stop it. Just a very polite and hospitable host." Alien lowered her eyes because she liked this guy herself. "Oh, a hospitable host. If you want to know, he is also one of the best students in the course, and an enviable groom. By the way, Alex, confirm my words." "Aha. An enviable groom without a bride." The guy laughed. "And this case is fixable." Jane persisted. "Let us take our alien and marry him off." "Oh, that's enough already. There's my house." The girl pointed to her 5-story building to the driver. The friends said goodbye, and Alien headed for the entrance. She was terribly sleepy. "I didn't even have the strength to take a shower." The girl changed her clothes and collapsed on the sofa. Drowning with her head in a soft pillow, Alien slept almost until lunch. When she opened her eyes, the afternoon sun was shining through the curtains. The girl stretched and went to the bathroom. Today she had to go to the courses in the evening, and also have time to buy groceries and cook food. There's almost nothing in the fridge at all. Entering the kitchen, she put the kettle on and took a can of coffee out of the cupboard. It was empty. Coffee would be nice now, but I'll have to drink tea. Alien thought. A phone trilled from the room. "Hello," the girl replied. "Hello, this is George. So I decided to call you to find out how you're doing. How are you feeling?" "Hi. It's all good." For some reason, Aliona's heart began to beat faster. "Let's meet tonight, go out somewhere?" the guy suggested. "I have a course tonight." "That's it. It's agreed. I'll meet you." After the course, the address was sent. Alien did not have time to come to her senses, did not have time to answer something, began to doubt, and George had already said goodbye and hung up. She was standing by the window and did not even notice how a smile was opening on her face. She really wanted to see this confident, grown-up, strong guy again. The girl hardly waited for the end of classes. George was waiting for her at the entrance. She had noticed his figure in the window a long time ago. "Hello," she said, and her heart began to beat very hard. "Hello." He held out his hand to her. "Come on." "Where to?" "I know a good place here. Let's sit down and have a bite. You must be hungry, right?" George was smiling with such a charming smile that the girl couldn't resist. Alien really didn't mind eating something right now. She didn't have time to go shopping. The small cafe with only a few tables was calm and quiet. A few customers were talking quietly, drinking coffee. The soft, calm music was relaxing. "Order whatever you want," the guy suggested when the waitress brought the menu. "And what will you do?" Alien asked. "I see. You're shy." George understood her question in his own way. "Well, then I'll make the order myself. You don't mind?" "Okay." The young man ordered a salad, roast, and dessert for himself and the alien. Watching her eat, George smiled. "I am so pleased that you agreed to meet with me," he said when they had finished dinner and were drinking coffee. "It's strange, it feels like I've known you for many years. And we often sit like this in a cafe," replied Alien. "But I don't really know anything about you at all." "What should I tell you? I was born in this city. I've lived here all my life. My mother raised me alone. Since childhood, she has instilled in me that the subject of my father is taboo. So even before school, I stopped asking her who my dad was. My mother had a hard time alone, but she did everything so that I didn't need anything. I am very grateful to her for that." "And who is your mother?" Alien asked. "Now she has her own publishing agency." "Oh, I see why you want to become a journalist." "I'm already working. My mother often gives me orders for publications so that I have my own money. It teaches you to work, so to speak. I've been writing for her publishing house since the 3rd year." Their cups had been empty for a long time, and there were no people in the cafe anymore. "Shall we go?" George suggested. They went outside. The warm May breeze was blowing Alina's hair. They walked along the square, enjoying each other's company. She didn't want to go home at all. The girl's soul has not had such calmness and a sense of security for a long time. "Well, will you tell me about yourself?" George asked. Alien was silent. She didn't know what to tell this confident guy who had everything going so well in his life. He was lucky. At least he had a mother who probably just adores her son, cares about him, loves him with all her soul. Alien couldn't boast of that. In her life, everything was exactly the opposite. That's how the world works. Fate is not kind to everyone. She has been singling out someone since childhood, and there is no explanation why this is happening. "My mother was a hairdresser," the girl began to tell about herself. "Well, then I also understand why you chose this profession. Did you follow in your mom's footsteps?" "Yes, she has been gone for many years. She died." "I'm sorry. And the father?" Alien didn't want to continue this topic at all. She had long ago taught herself not to remember her childhood. Her father drank, sometimes raised his hand against her mother, but she loved him very much. Despite her young age, the girl still remembered some of the scenes that frightened her as a child. She was forced to huddle in a corner, hide behind a closet or under a table. One day he got drunk, and a man died in a fight because of him. That's how he ended up in prison. He died of grief there. The mother has now started drinking alcohol. She often left her 5-year-old daughter alone at home for a few days, going on a spree. The woman was kicked out of work. At the barber shop, her hands often shook, and customers complained about the smell of fumes. Seeing all this, the neighbors called the Social Security staff, and after a while the mother was deprived of parental rights. After that, the mother was completely drunk. From a beautiful, blooming, and always well-groomed woman, she turned into a monster. The booze ruined her, and one day the neighbors found the girl's mother dead in her apartment. The grandmother took custody of the girl and took her to herself. But by the time Alien had to go to 1st grade, Grandma died of a heart attack. That's how Alien got into an orphanage. The girl did not want to tell all this to a guy who was doing well in his life, and who liked her so much. Other people's problems and failures, even if they do not depend on us, are not needed by anyone. So she kept quiet for a bit and decided to lie. "I never knew him either." "I see. You and I are friends in misfortune, it turns out." George wanted to defuse the situation. He saw that the conversation he started went in the wrong direction, made Alien sad, and he didn't want to spoil the evening. But the girl was already immersed in the memories that she had so diligently banished from her head. She was almost good at it. Only George brought her back to the past. 2 years ago, she left the orphanage. The girl was lucky. Very quickly she was given an apartment, like an orphan. Some savings in the account helped the girl at first, and everything seemed to be fine. But something happened that made her look at the world with different eyes and realize that it was not as kind and warm as the one in which she lived. She was raised in an orphanage. There, educators took care of her and other children, taught them how to live, helped, listened, and pitied them. One day, returning home late at night from a part-time job, she ran into a group of guys. They started molesting the girl. There was no one nearby. These three attacked the alien. She couldn't even make a sound out of fear. The horror of that evening haunted her for several weeks, until she realized that she was pregnant. She made an interruption. She did not want to raise a child without knowing who his father was. Jane's friend, whom she had already befriended, helped organize everything. I found a doctor who would agree to do everything quickly, without additional examinations, collecting certificates and passing tests. If it wasn't for Jane, she would have gone crazy. The friend was the only person who knew about this terrible incident. "Have I offended you in some way?" George asked, noticing that the girl had withdrawn into herself. "Are you thinking about something?" "I'm just really tired." "I'm sorry," said Alien. They had already reached her entrance. The stars were shining in the sky. The barely opened leaves on the trees glistened softly in the light breeze. George took Alien's hands, turned her towards him, and looked intently into her eyes. "How fluffy her eyelashes are," he thought. "I really don't want to part with you." The guy said quietly, "Let's go out of town for the weekend and have a little picnic. I'll take my mom's car. We'll go for a ride. I promise you won't regret it. I know such a wonderful place where no sad thoughts can come to mind." "I'll think about it," Alien replied. "I have to go." "Yes, of course. I will hope to see you again." He wanted to kiss her on the cheek, but the girl had already turned around and walked to the door. That night, Alien fell asleep with mixed feelings in her soul. On the one hand, she liked George so much, she had never experienced anything like this before. A strange excitement enveloped her in a soft veil. But the fact that he had stirred up the most unpleasant memories in her overshadowed all the pleasant moments of the evening. Life was unfair to her. But Alien has long since come to terms with this and tried to live independently so that someone from above would see that she was worthy of happiness. She will do everything for this. The morning began with a loud doorbell. She woke up, looked at her watch. 9:30 in the morning. Who was brought in so early? Slipping her feet into her slippers, she went into the hallway and opened the door. Jane appeared on the threshold. "Are you still asleep?" The friend flew into the apartment with lightning speed, kicked off her high-heeled shoes and proceeded to the kitchen. The girl followed her, rubbing her eyes. "Is that how you can sleep when I have such news for you?" "What's the news?" "Coffee first, I really want to cheer up." Jane has already opened the closet and took out the still unopened jar that Galen bought the day before when she went to the grocery store. "What are you standing for? Put the kettle on." "Why are you so excited?" From the powerful energy of her friend, Alien woke up to the end. She filled the kettle with water, put it on the stove, and turned on the gas. "Late last night, the owner of the salon called me and said that she was taking you and me to work. Think about it, something happened there. One of the masters mixed up the compositions and the oxidizer and dyed her hair blue. There was such a scandal. In short, this creative was fired right away, and the hostess called me." "Come on." Alien was surprised that such a layman could work in the salon. "Yes, and I called you right away, but you didn't answer the phone, and then you became unavailable at all. By the way, your phone is out of range right now." Jane cut off a piece of sausage in a masterly way and was preparing to start breakfast. "Anyway, get ready. We have to be in the salon by 11 o'clock. Can you imagine? Now you and I have a permanent job. Where were you yesterday? Why didn't you answer?" Jane shouted loudly so that the alien could hear. "I was walking." The answer came from the bathroom. Jane would not have been surprised by her friend's response if she had said that she had been sleeping or reading, or at the very least watching the series. But for Alien to walk, and even so late. The girl still remembered that terrible incident and knew that Alien tries not to go alone in the evenings. Her friend's answer put her in a stupor, so she wasn't walking alone. When she came out of the bathroom, Jane was already all turned on with curiosity. "Well, who were we walking with?" "What is it?" she asked, smiling slyly. "With George." Alien simply replied. "Yes, did he ask you out?" "What date?" "Come on. We just went for a walk, sat in a cafe. Then he walked me home." Alien's cheeks suddenly turned pink. "I'm happy for you, girlfriend. George is a great guy. And it's great that he liked you so much that he invited you for a walk the very next day after meeting you. And you didn't want to go to the party yet." "It doesn't mean anything," Alien insisted. "We just went for a walk." "Okay, just so simple. It was not in Jane's rules to pry into other people's personal affairs. Come on, get ready." From that day on, Alien's life began to change for the better. The hostess of the beauty salon, where they had been interning all this time, greeted the girls quite affably. She showed them their workplace. The girls still had one for two. They had to work in shifts, but it suited them. Alien is completely immersed in her work. She was fascinated by everything that happened in the salon and liked it when the clients left happy, refreshed, rejuvenated. The magic of hairdressing fascinated her. Here comes a lady who is well over 50, and after half an hour no one will give her that age. A new hairstyle, a beautiful hair color without a hint of gray, styling that suits her very well. The client is happy. Alien is proud of its work. Carried away, she almost completely forgot about Igor, but he called on Friday night. "Hi, have you considered my offer to go on a picnic?" Alien was taken by surprise by this call. She wanted to see the man again, next to whom her heart began to beat faster. "I work until lunch on Saturday," she replied hesitantly. "It's okay, we'll go after lunch." The guy said confidently. "Agreed?" "Okay." Alien agreed. "I'll pick you up at 2:00 dot." "Okay, yes, I'll be waiting." She hung up the phone and wondered if she was in too much of a hurry, going alone with a guy out of town, where there would be no one else. She liked George, but the negative experience of communicating with guys was alarming. She pushed bad thoughts away from herself, persuaded that everything would be fine. George just couldn't hurt her. He is decent, intelligent, educated, well-mannered. She was not mistaken and did not regret for a minute that she went on a picnic with George. He picked her up, as promised. They raced along a country highway, enjoying the wind spinning in the car, through the open windows and the music playing from the radio. Alien admired the beautiful landscapes flashing by the window, and George looked at her and smiled. He brought her to the shore of a small lake. "How do you like the place? What is it?" he asked, opening the trunk of the car to get groceries and a folding barbecue. "It's very beautiful. It's amazing. I'm glad you like it." George handed Alien a basket of fruits and vegetables, and he took care of the meat. "In general, it will be very crowded here in the summer. While the bathing season has not started, you can count on privacy. And I can't swim at all." "They didn't teach this in our orphanage," said Alien. "They taught me a lot of things, but they didn't teach me to swim." "What's the problem? Do you want me to teach you?" "Well, when summer comes, of course." George laughed. "I don't know." The girl was slicing tomatoes and cucumbers with might and main, laying out apples on plastic plates. In between, she watched George masterfully cook meat on coals and enjoyed the aroma of an almost finished barbecue. It was a wonderful day. They had a great time, enjoyed delicious food, listened to music, laughed, and just talked about different topics. George no longer touched on the topic of the past. She felt at ease and comfortable with him. At some point, the guy thought about it and looked at Alien carefully. "You know, when you came to the party that night, I just couldn't take my eyes off you," he said softly. "You are special, not like the girls from my department, like childhood friends, like those around me." Alien was silent, not knowing what to say to such a revelation of the guy. "I want you to be my girlfriend. I want to get to know you better every day, be there for you, help and protect you." Goosebumps ran down Aliona's body. I have never said such words before. The girl was pleased, but she did not know what to answer in such cases, so she continued to remain silent. "Don't you like me?" George asked, looking into her blue eyes. "I like you," Alien replied softly. "But are you sure you need someone like me? You have an education, a nice apartment, Mom, after all. And I'm just a hairdresser." "It doesn't matter at all. I'm sure you're going to be very good. And don't worry about Mom. She'll like you, I'm sure. I think you're in a hurry. We don't know each other at all." Alien picked a blade of grass and fiddled with it in her hands. "Don't worry, I won't rush you. I just want us to be together. I just want to see you more often." "I agree. Let's meet up. And sometimes spend time together." They smiled at each other. The situation lightened up by itself. George brought the alien home when it was already dark outside. Without knowing why, she was in no hurry to get out of the car. She was pleased to be with him. She did not want to part at all. George looked at her and was silent. And then he took my hand, brought his face closer, and kissed me. When she opened her eyes, he was looking at her and smiling. "See you later." He should have said goodbye, but he still wouldn't let go of her hand. "Yes, see you," Alien said softly. After going up to the apartment, she sat down on the sofa and closed her eyes. There was a viscous silence in the room. I didn't want to turn on the TV or even the light. The girl felt George's kiss on her lips over and over again, and some kind of unrestrained, soft, warm happiness filled her from the inside. It's been 6 months. George defended his diploma and worked at his mother's publishing house. During this time, the girl managed to get regular customers in the beauty salon who wanted only her to serve them. The hostess often praised the girl. "You have a talent, Alien," she said. "It's not for nothing that you have such a record." "I'm glad I didn't make a mistake about you." George and Alien called each other every day. Whenever possible, we met, spent evenings together, went to cafes, went to the cinema, just walked. The guy, as promised, did not rush the alien. There was no intimacy between them during this time, only kisses and hugs. One day they settled comfortably in a cafe on the embankment, choosing a table by the window. It was drizzling outside, nailing the yellowed foliage to the asphalt, and the wind was trying hard to disperse the damp leaves. "You know," George said, holding the girl's hand, "I want you to meet my mom. I think it's time. I love you, and anyway, tomorrow I'm inviting you to dinner with us." "Does your mom know about me?" the girl asked. "She knows I have a girlfriend, but that's all. So I want you to get to know each other, and our relationship has moved to another level." "What do you mean?" "I want you to be able to come to our house as my beloved girl. I want everyone to know that we are together, that I have you and you have me." "I'm afraid your mom won't like me. "Don't worry about it. She will accept any choice I make. Mom loves me and will be happy if I'm happy." Alien nodded silently. But she was not completely sure that they were doing everything right. However, she hoped that everything would go well, and decided that she would definitely prepare properly for this meeting. Alien knew who would help and support her. When she got home, the first thing she did was call Jane. "Can you come?" she asked her friend. "Right now? Something happened?" "Yes, it happened. Please come." Alien knew that Jane would come rushing at the first call. You don't need to explain anything to her over the phone. Half an hour later, a friend was already ringing the doorbell. "I saw you at work today. What could have happened in a few hours?" Jane asked, walking into the kitchen. "Will you make coffee?" "Yes, I'll put the kettle on now." Alien took out the cups. "What happened is that George wants to introduce me to his mother tomorrow." "Come on." Jane knew, of course, that Alien and George were dating, that they were both in love. She also knew that apart from kissing, there was nothing between them. Therefore, I treated this relationship more like a platonic one. So I was surprised that George was already taking Alien to his home to introduce him to his mother. Usually it's not like that for couples. They sleep together a couple of times. If everything remains the same, introduce them to their parents, or even go to get acquainted when a pregnancy test shows 2 stripes. And here everything is somehow childish, and they are already going to bow to their mother. "Yes, today he told me that tomorrow we are going to have dinner at their house. I'm really worried, Jane. What if she doesn't like me? Oh my God. Do you want to live with her or something? I already thought something incredible had happened to you. And then, just think, sit at the table, eat something homemade. You get different questions. This is usually the case. That's what I'm afraid of. What am I going to tell about myself? That my father was a criminal, my mother got drunk, and I grew up in an orphanage. She put her palms to her eyes, rubbing them to calm her pulse. Don't tell me that. Get off the subject or say you're dead. Usually after such an answer, tactful people do not ask how it happened. Well, that's a lie. Alien objected. You can't start a relationship with a lie. And George, didn't you lie about your parents? Jane asked. I wasn't lying, I just didn't say anything. He saw that this topic was upsetting me and did not touch it again. So don't tell his mother either. Jane hugged her friend by the shoulders and worries. And so everything will be fine. Don't you understand? It's rude not to answer questions. Alien, pull yourself together. You better think about what you will appear in front of your mother, advised a friend. It's true, the girl agreed. His mother is probably such an elegant lady, owns a publishing house, drives a car, and what a luxurious apartment they have. You know that. That's exactly why you have to be in all your glory. Come on, let's see what's in your closet that's decent. The girls went into the room. Jane opened the closet door in a masterly way and critically examined her friend's wardrobe one by one. Hangers with dresses and skirts flew onto the sofa. Listen, put on this knitted dress. A friend held out a hanger with a blue monochrome dress. Firstly, according to the weather. Secondly, nothing flashy. You will look quite decent. Do you think? Of course, it's better to pay attention to the appearance. Make light makeup and you can curl the hair at the tips. That's all. Jane seemed very pleased with herself. As always, she helped her friend solve the problem and was proud of it. Come on, you'll worry when we choose a wedding dress, laughed Jane. Come on, you're kidding. And what if he goes to introduce his mother? Then he wants to introduce her as a bride. It's like you came from another world. All guys do that. No, we haven't even had that yet. Alien spoke softly. And you didn't have that, as you say, just because you don't want to. George would have been glad for a long time. I'm sure of it. Jane, stop making me blush. She waved her friend away, pressed her cool palms to her hot cheeks. On the one hand, the girl was grateful to her friend for her support, but on the other, Jane's outspoken statements drove her crazy every time, put her into a stupor, made her blush. Nevertheless, she agreed with the advice about the dress, put it aside, and put the rest of the clothes back in the closet. The girls went into the hallway. That's it. I ran, Jane said, giving her friend a peck on the cheek. Tell me later how it went. Of course, what are you talking about? Who else am I going to tell? Alien closed the door behind her friend and looked at herself in the mirror. Still, George shouldn't have come up with this introduction to Mom, she thought. Had it been bad for the two of them all these months? After seeing the alien home, George drove home. Opening the apartment door, he shouted loudly. Mom, I'm at home. I'm in the kitchen, son. Go to dinner, Anne replied. You're hungry as a beast. The guy sat down at the table, and his mother put a plate of fried potatoes and sausages in front of him. But tomorrow you still have to cook a normal dinner with everything that should be on the table, the guy declared. Yes, and what kind of holiday is tomorrow? Anne asked, sitting down opposite her son and pouring him tea. And tomorrow, Mom, I'll introduce you to my girlfriend, George said solemnly. Unexpectedly, Mom smiled, propping her chin on her hand and leaning on the table. Nothing unexpected. We've been dating for 6 months now, George said. Give me the bread, please. The woman handed her son a plate with sliced bread. She took a deep breath. Anne knew that George was dating someone. He often talked on the phone with some girl. In addition, she could not help but notice that her son was simply glowing with happiness, did not stay at work too long, and came home late. She did not ask George about his personal life. I knew he would tell me everything himself when the time came. And now, apparently, that time has come. Once I decided to introduce her to my girlfriend, so it's very serious. Can you tell me a little bit who she is? Mother asked, so that I would at least know what to talk about with her. She's just a wonderful girl. Georgianne interrupted. That's enough. The guy wiped his mouth with a napkin and got up from the table. Anne didn't like her son's answer. The smile quickly disappeared from her face. Mom, I hope there won't be any sausages on the table tomorrow. Cook everything beautifully and deliciously, as you know how, George asked. I have absolutely no time to cook. Offended, the woman decided to order food in a restaurant, since she is such a gourmet. Mom, she's not a gourmet, but my favorite girl. And I want your acquaintance to go well, so that she likes you and you like her. George hugged his mother's shoulders as much as he could on the cheek to make everything very tasty. I'm going to my room. The woman was left alone in the kitchen, confused. After sitting at the table for a couple more minutes, she began to clear away the dishes. Her boy has grown up, matured, and now she is no longer the main person in his life, but some strange girl. And so he decided to bring her to their house. This situation was expected. Any mother knows that sooner or later this moment will come. That's how life works. Anne also understood that time was running out. The son may very soon have his own family, and she will have grandchildren. It's only one thing to understand and know that it will happen there sometime in the distant future. And another thing is to stand on the threshold and meet the one who has captured the heart of her son. A sharp stab of jealousy pecked at her heart. But Anne did not want to quarrel with her son. Dinner will still have to be cooked, although there is absolutely no time to run around the shops. The woman sat down at the table again, took out her smartphone, and opened a website with grocery delivery at home. The next day, Anne called her secretary into her office. Angela, I'm going to leave early today, she told the girl. You will control everything here, and do not forget to close the office. Has something happened? Angela asked. Yes, George is bringing his girlfriend to meet him today. We need to cook dinner. The boss replied. Wow, congratulations. With what, Angela? Anne was angry. I have no idea who this girl is, what she wants from my son. And the unknown, scares and worries. And there are so many scams around who are chasing young and successful people. You're right. Angela nodded her head. I'll do everything, I'll check it, I'll close it. That's good, the boss calmed down. The woman took her purse, took out a keychain with car keys and left the office. And Angela remained standing in the office thinking. She had liked the boss's son for a long time. She even showed him signs of attention, often brought coffee, and also dragged homemade pastries from home, tried to feed the guy. He always thanked her, but he didn't pay much attention to the girl. Angela knew and believed that gradually she would be able to win his heart. But now all her dreams are falling apart. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Anne took off her apron and hurried into the hallway. Her son was standing in front of her, holding the hand of a girl of about 20 years old. Her son's friend was smiling shyly. Mom, meet Alien, said George. Alien, this is my mom, Anne. It's a pleasure, the girl said, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. George's mother looked at her carefully, waiting for her son to help the girl take off her coat. Alien was wearing a simple knitted blue dress, long blonde hair curled over her shoulders. Anne noted that her son has good taste. The girl is really beautiful. He keeps himself modest. She even breathed a sigh of relief for a moment. Alien, in turn, saw a beautiful, statuesque, elegantly dressed woman in front of her. She looked like she couldn't even be 40 years old. Come into the living room, George's mom suggested. I'll be right there. I have more hot stuff in the oven. Yes, come on in, don't be shy. Make yourself at home. George pushed the girl towards the open doors to the hall. She had been here once before, at a party. But today the room looked very different. There was a beautifully set table in the center. The room was illuminated by a large crystal chandelier with many ringing droplets. There was silence. Don't be afraid of anything, George whispered in the girl's ear and helped her sit down at the table. Mom, do you need any help? Anne was already entering the living room, carrying a platter of baked meat in her hands. "You'd better sit down at the table." There was silence in the room for a while. No one knew where to start a conversation. Mom was the first to break this awkwardness. "Son, take care of the guest and me. Put the salad on." She smiled at the alien. While George was putting food on plates, the woman decided to ask the girl. "Alien, tell us about yourself. What do you do?" "Are you a student?" Anne asked. "No, I'm working." The girl replied softly. "Yes? I wonder who." "Mom, she works as a hairdresser in a beauty salon." George was ahead of the girl with the answer. "She is very talented. She is appreciated at work." "Didn't you get an education?" The guy's mother continued the interrogation. "No, unfortunately," replied Alien. "I took a hairdressing course and immediately went to work." The mother looked at her son significantly. Her first impression of the pretty girl was already beginning to deteriorate. Anne saw an educated girl with a status, or at least a good profession, next to George. "And here's the hairdresser. And who are your parents? What do they do?" Alien was silent, head down. She expected such questions, but it turned out to be very difficult to answer. "Mom, Alien has no parents," George answered for the girl. "And anyway, what are you bothering about? Let the guest eat in peace." "What do you mean there are no parents?" The woman put down her fork and knife. "And who raised you, supported you?" "I grew up in an orphanage." Finally, Alien gathered her willpower and answered decisively. Natalia Ilyinichna's eyebrows went up. She was silent for a while, and then got up, took a dish from the table and asked her son George, "Will you help me make tea?" "Yes, of course." The guy got up from the table and followed his mother. When they disappeared through the door, Alien gathered up the empty plates and headed to the kitchen to help clear the table too. Walking down the hallway, she heard Anne's voice. "Are you crazy? Who did you bring into the house?" She chastised George, the hairdresser from the orphanage. "Are you going to marry her?" "We haven't discussed it yet, but I really love Alien," the guy replied. "Over my dead body, do you hear? I will never let you ruin your life by associating it with this beggar from the orphanage." Suddenly, mother and son noticed in the doorway with plates in their hands. The girl took a few steps forward and put the dishes on the table. "Here, I picked it up from the table," she said, turned around and walked away. "Mom, there must be at least some sense of tact," George said angrily. "How can you not understand? She's my girlfriend." The door lock clanged loudly. It was Alien who left, slamming the door. George rushed after him, putting on his jacket and hat as he went. "Alien, stop." He caught up with her in the yard. "Yes, you stop, I say." He grabbed the girl, turned her around, and held her tightly. "I'm not letting you go anywhere," he said, looking into her eyes. "I love you. And I will never enter your house again," the girl said softly. "Never mind. Mom just doesn't know you yet." He began to kiss her cheeks, wet with tears. Resentment against a woman who, in the first hour of meeting her, poured mud over her, poured out salty drops. She was crying like a child who had been wronged. She was very hurt and hurt. Did she really deserve such hurtful words for all that Alien had to go through? After all, she didn't say a bad word to George's mother. "I want to go home," the girl said, calming down a little. "Come on, I'm with you. I'm not coming back either until Mom apologizes to you." They caught a taxi and got to the Alien house very quickly. George, as usual, stopped at the girl's entrance, hugged and kissed her on the lips. And she suddenly took his hand and said, "Let's go." She pulled George towards the door. They ran up to the floor. The girl hurriedly opened the door. Everything that happened after that should have happened a long time ago. George dreamed of intimacy with his girlfriend, but waited for her to want it herself. And she wanted to. Today, more than ever, she needed his embrace, his love. He was whispering, "I love you. I love you, Dot." When dawn broke, George said, "I want to always be with you. Let's get married, Dot." She did not immediately understand the meaning of his words. She sat up, covered herself with a blanket, and looked at George in surprise. "Are you serious?" It can't be more serious. What about your mom? Looking anxiously into the guy's eyes, Alien asked. What does my mom have to do with it? He replied. She has her own life. I am an adult, self-sufficient person. I have a good job. You and I will get along just fine without her help. The girl threw herself on his chest. I love you so much, she whispered. They spent the whole next day together, cooking lunch together, walking through the streets of the sleeping area, kissing and feeling absolutely happy. After coming home with their shopping, George and Alien began to cook dinner. Suddenly the phone rang. This is mine, George said and went into the room to answer the phone. Sensing something was wrong, Alien sat down on a chair. From what she could hear from the kitchen, the girl realized that George's mother was calling. I'm not coming back until you reconsider your attitude towards Alien. Mom. The guy was saying, stop shouting. No, I'll come to work tomorrow as usual. All right. He returned to the kitchen and saw a sad Alien. Come on, baby. It's okay. We're together. He hugged the girl and then suddenly picked her up in his arms and spun her around. Aren't they going to feed me in this house today? She laughed and became light and calm that George did not gather at his mother's first call and did not leave her after what had happened between them. In the morning, Alien cooked breakfast, but George refused, drinking only a cup of coffee. I have to run home and change before work, he said. And in the evening? Asked Alien anxiously. And what about tonight? I'll pick you up at the beauty salon after work. Let's go to your place. Or do you not like my constant presence in that apartment? I really like it, the girl smiled. George kissed her and left. When he arrived home, his mother was gone. She went to the publishing house. After changing clothes and taking the folder with the manuscripts he was working on, George also hurried to the office. Angela's secretary met him in the hallway. Hello. Would you like some coffee? No, not now, I'm sorry, the guy answered on the move and hurried to the office of the correction service. He was working on a big project and deadlines are tight. I wanted to have time to complete the planned amount of work in order to spend the evening with Alien. But about 15 minutes later, the internal phone on his desk rang. I called my mother. Without asking Vera if he could come in, he opened the door to his mother's office. Did you call? Well-mannered people say hello first, Anne said without looking up from the papers on the table. Well-mannered people do not insult people about whom they know nothing at all and respect the choice of others. Hello, Mom. Anne raised her head and looked at her son attentively. Inside her, there was a struggle between a mother who endlessly loves her only son and a woman whose place a beautiful young girl wants to take. In this struggle, love and jealousy had equal powers. Hello, son. I need to talk to you. George sat down on a chair next to a large conference table. He didn't want to think about what had happened at their house. But the guy understood that he would have to talk about it. His mother is his own person, and they will have to compromise. Let's talk, he agreed. I guess I was wrong. I realized this during the day that you were not at home. I changed my mind a lot. You see, George, this is not the future I imagined for you. And what did you imagine? The guy interrupted his mother in anger. Did you think that I would bring home the daughter of an oligarch, an airy dummy, for whom only trips to salons, spas, and endless shopping are important? Mom, you understand, I love Alien just because I love her, because she loves me. And she does it sincerely. If you want to know, I fell in love with her at first sight. We've been dating for 6 months now. Do you really think that if I had doubted her feelings for even a minute, I would have continued my relationship with her? Calm down, son, I believe you. That's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Anne tried to soften the tone of the conversation. Sit down, tell me, are you serious about marrying an alien? Yes, Mom. I seriously intend to get married. Well, in the end, I have to trust your choice. And in this case, I will soon have grandchildren, right? Well, we didn't think about it. Maybe they will. George was still offended by his mother, although he felt that she was ready for reconciliation. Well, okay, I apologize to Alien. She will soon become a member of our family and my daughter-in-law. Let's apply and let her come to us on the weekend. Let's discuss the preparations for the wedding. George was confused. It wasn't like her mother to make peace so quickly. Anne has always had a strong character, was able to defend her opinion, and did not deviate from it. Otherwise, she would not have been successful in business. But on the other hand, he was glad that she had at least accepted his decision. "You really don't mind if we get married?" George asked incredulously. "Since you love Alien, I don't mind. The main thing for me is your happiness, son." She went up to George and hugged him. It was hard to accept that her son would have his own family, but otherwise she could lose her son. And Anne couldn't let that happen. "Thank you, Mom." George thanked me. "Only I will live with Alien, so we will come together on the weekend. But this condition does not suit me at all." The mother objected. "First of all, there are some rules of decency. The bride and groom do not live in the same apartment before the wedding. And secondly, you have your own house to which you take your young wife. In the meantime, live separately. That's what I insist on. Believe me, it's the right thing to do." There was a steely note in Anne's voice again. George thought for a moment, and then said, "You're probably right, Mom. That's settled. I'll be waiting for you at home tonight. In the meantime, go work." Walking down the corridor of the publishing house, George still could not believe that his mother had made concessions to him and was ready to accept Alien. He was already looking forward to telling her about everything tonight, and why wait for the evening? "Alien, do you have your passport with you?" George asked the girl, having reached her by phone. "Yes, what happened?" "We'll meet at the fountain in the center at lunchtime." "Agreed?" "Okay, what happened?" "You'll find out. I'll be waiting." George hung up the phone. He thought for a while, and then picked up the smartphone in his hand again and dialed the flower delivery service. He can't lead Alien to apply without a bouquet. 2 months later, George and Alien got married. The young people were happy. Anne was at a loss not to fall into the dirt in front of the guests, and she named more than 50 people. Most of the invited people are colleagues from the publishing house, business partners, and friends of the woman. But the young ones invited Jane and Alex, as well as several friends of George. The wedding was celebrated in a restaurant. Alien looked amazing in a snow-white dress, and George in a blue suit with buds of small white roses seemed very solemn and grown up. Looking at her son, Anne wiped away a tear from time to time. After the wedding, the young couple settled in the apartment of the groom of his mother. After long-term disputes, it was decided that while they would live together with Anne, it would be seen further the apartment is large. There is enough space for everyone. Alien tried to help Anne with the housework. She didn't know how to cook much. They didn't teach this at the orphanage, but I bought a book with recipes and cooked according to it. But her mother-in-law always praised her for her cleanliness. The daughter-in-law was really a very neat girl. She kept the whole apartment clean. Almost immediately after the wedding, the family began a tradition of dining together on Sundays. If on other days the young people could go to a restaurant or eat without waiting for their mother-in-law, then on Sunday from 17 everyone had to be at the table. She cooked mostly for Alien, but Anne often joined her if she was free. So one Sunday, the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law were cooking Sunday dinner together in the kitchen. George was not at home. He went out to the store. While Alien was chopping vegetables, her husband's mother was flipping through a magazine. Her sister-in-law asked her to move the pot. The woman abruptly stood up, picked up the pot, and then her eyes went dark. She fell to the floor, knocking over a 3-liter bowl of boiling broth. "Oh my God!" screamed Alien and rushed to her husband's mother. She was screaming loudly. Then the scream turned into a soft sob. The girl grabbed the phone and dialed the medics. When George approached the entrance, his mother was already being loaded into the car on a stretcher. Alien was crying nearby. "What's wrong? What's wrong with Mom?" "This is terrible." She dropped a pot of broth on herself. He was very hot. The guy shoved a package into his wife's hands. "Go home, I'll go with her," he said. She couldn't find a place for herself at home. She has already reproached herself 100 times for asking her mother-in-law to remove the saucepan from the stove because she could have done it herself. George returned late in the evening. "How's Mom?" Alien asked anxiously. "Severe burn, he will be in the hospital." The husband replied wearily. How did this happen? I was chopping vegetables, and she was reading something in a magazine. I asked her to remove the saucepan from the heat, and she stood up and then swayed and fell. Maybe I was dizzy. It's my fault. Come on, it's not your fault. My mother thinks I don't know anything, but her blood pressure has been jumping for a long time. Age doesn't make anyone healthier. Everything will be fine, don't worry. The patient was in the hospital for a whole month. George had to take over the duties of the director of the publishing house. Alien asked for a vacation at work and took care of her mother-in-law. She hardly left her side, stayed in the hospital room from morning to evening, fed her, helped her change clothes, talked to her, and read the manuscripts given to her by George. During this time, the daughter-in-law and mother-in-law became very close. After being discharged from the hospital, they came home as relatives. At dinner, Anne said in a serious tone, "That's it, my children. I've had time to think about everything. George, since you're doing a great job as director, so be it. Stay in the manager's chair, and I will rest. Mom, are you sure?" "Don't interrupt. I have another solution." His mother cut him off. "I bought a plot in the city a long time ago. It's time for us to get out of this three-room den, which I hope will soon become too small for us. You're going to give me grandchildren, aren't you? So son, start building a house. I think we can do it in 2 or 3 years." What a surprise. Alien gasped in shock. "This is all very well, of course, but I would also like to discuss something with you." I turned to George's wife and mother. "I have some savings, and I thought my wife will stop working for her uncle, or rather for her aunt. She may have her own beauty salon, albeit a small one, but still her own. What do you think, Mom?" Alien looked in surprise at her husband, then at her mother-in-law. Everything that was said at the table that evening was very unexpected for her. She could not imagine herself as the owner of the salon. "That's a great idea," Anne smiled. "Let her learn how to run a business, and you help her." "I do not know what to say," the girl said happily. "That's how much you need to do: find a room, buy equipment, recruit staff. You can handle everything. You're a smart girl." "Well, that's nice," Anne said, looking at her happy son and daughter-in-law. As they say, there would be no happiness, but misfortune would help. 8 years have passed. The family has long since moved into a large 2-story house with its own plot. Anne set up a small flower garden, took care of plants, grew roses, asters, peonies. George ran a publishing house that flourished and brought in good income. Alien has turned into a real businesswoman. Everything was fine, but Alien still couldn't get pregnant. She and George went through a lot of examinations, but all in vain. She never told her husband about the termination of her pregnancy, which she had done many years ago. She didn't want him to know about that unpleasant event in her life. But in her heart, Alien blamed herself for not being able to give birth to her husband's son or daughter. Only the absence of children has overshadowed the life of this family. George was preparing to celebrate the 15th anniversary of the publishing house. It was announced to the staff that the corporate event would be held in the restaurant. Everyone is invited, as well as regular customers and partners. Everyone was in high spirits. George was giving the last assignment to Vera, who stood in front of him with a notebook, writing down everything he said. She still hadn't given up trying to win over the handsome director. George paused, looked her up and down critically. Her clothes were too provocative. "Angela, did it ever occur to you to dress more decently for work?" the man asked. "Don't you like it?" The girl was defiantly spinning around herself. "In my opinion, it is very fashionable and stylish." "In my opinion, it's just vulgar," the director interrupted her. The day before, George's mother again started talking about the fact that they could not give her grandchildren in any way, which brought Alien to tears. The man was already so tired of rushing between his mother and his wife, calming one or the other, that sometimes he did not even want to return home. Remembering his wife's tantrum yesterday, he sighed heavily. He also wanted a son, but he loved Alien no less than 8 years ago, and was not going to part with her just because there was no baby in their family. His mother indirectly insisted that George get a divorce, all the time repeating that the years were flying by, that she was getting old and would soon not be able to babysit her grandson if he ever did show up. Trying to banish sad thoughts from himself, George plunged into work. My wife refused to go to a corporate party on the occasion of the 15th anniversary of the publishing house, citing ill health. She cried all night again and fell asleep in the morning only thanks to the pills she took. He kissed his wife as usual and left the house. Alien watched sadly as her husband got into the car and drove out the gate. The woman felt that she had been in a terrible state for a long time. Even the 2 weeks at sea that they spent with her husband this summer could not completely rid her of this condition. She didn't want to go to a restaurant with her husband, have fun, and be happy when she felt so bad. Also, the mother-in-law constantly added fuel to the fire, whispered to her husband that it was necessary to leave a barren wife, and sometimes openly expressed her dissatisfaction, bringing Alien to tears. The marriage was bursting at the seams, and she didn't know what to do. The restaurant was fun and noisy. The guests were dancing. From time to time, a pause was announced, which was filled with congratulations and gifts. The publisher's birthday was a great success. Only George somehow got over it very quickly. He downed glass after glass, hardly eating, and by the end of the evening he was almost on his feet. "Thank you all so much for the congratulations. I love you all, everyone," shouted the sweetest director. Such behavior by George Ilyich, whom the whole city knew, could cause irreparable damage to the reputation of the publishing house, but he did not care. At one point he even started dancing, which shocked some guests and made others have fun. Someone even took out a smartphone and started filming the inappropriate behavior of the director of the publishing house. Watching all this, Angela's secretary became more and more horrified. She knew her boss well. The next day he will bitterly regret what he did the day before. But now something had to be done to prevent the situation from going too far. So that George would not embarrass himself in front of his partners, who were already squinting at him, looking disapprovingly. "Let me dance with you." Angela grabbed the director by the waist, hugged him to her, and began to push him towards the exit. "Where are you taking me?" "I want to have fun," muttered George. "And now we will continue to have fun, only in the fresh air." Angela coaxed him, continuing to push him towards the exit. On the street, she caught the first taxi she saw and put the director there. She sat down next to him and gave the driver the address. "Where are we going, Angela?" George asked her. "To a secret place where no one will know how you fought today," George Ilyich, the secretary said affectionately. "Do we need to go there?" the director asked, trying to lift his head from Vera's lap. He seemed ready to go to sleep in the car. After paying off the taxi driver, Angela barely pulled the director out of the car and dragged him to her home. The girl lived in a hostel, but she had a good relationship with the janitor. So, after grumbling a little, the old woman let her pass with a man. In the room, Angela took the bottle of cognac she had started from the cabinet and poured it into glasses. "Okay, you need to shake things up a little," she said, holding up the man's card. After drinking a little, after a while George began to come to his senses. "Where am I?" he asked. "And you're in a secret place," Angela said affectionately, hugging and kissing him. "You'll be very happy here. You have no idea how good it's going to be for you." George did not understand well what he was doing, but he did not lose his masculine strength. Even despite the large amount of alcohol she drank, she achieved what she wanted. She finally dragged the director into her bed. In the morning, George had a terrible headache. He was horrified to find himself in a small room in an unfamiliar bed, with his secretary lying next to him. Still swaying slightly, he got out of bed, found his clothes, and began to get dressed. At home, George said that he had had too much, did not want to return home like this, and slept on the sofa in his office at the publishing house. "Go take a shower and go to rest." "You need to sleep it off," said Alien. "Ugh, how you stink. Why did you drink so much?" "Forgive me, my dear. I don't know what came over me." George's mother and wife tried not to remember this incident anymore. But Angela, at every opportunity, reminded the director of how good it was together. She continued to stick to him at work every day. George was stressed out by all this, but he felt guilty. He was angry at himself, not at Angela. One day, the secretary entered the office uninvited. She looked worried. "Is something wrong, Angela?" George asked. "It happened. I'm pregnant." Angela lowered her head. "From you." George got up from his desk, walked over to the secretary and looked into her eyes. "You're not lying. Is there no mistake?" "No. What should I do now?" Angela sobbed. "Calm down. And what should be done in this situation?" "At least to provide for me and the child, at most to get married. After all, this is your baby. So the second is excluded. I'll help you with the money. I still need a place to live. It's not like raising a kid in a dorm." "I'll decide, go." The girl left the office, and George sat down in an armchair and dropped his head into his hands. He's going to have a long-awaited baby. His blood, not from my wife. And this is a fact that both pleased and worried the man at the same time. He very quickly came up with a place to comfortably accommodate Angela and her unborn child in Alina's apartment. It's empty anyway. George will say that he handed her over to an employee who has temporary difficulties. 2 more years have passed. That night, when Alien unexpectedly witnessed her husband's conversation with his mother, she could no longer sleep. She and George became more and more estranged from each other and no longer made any attempts to get closer. We lived as friends, as buddies, sometimes even as neighbors. Now, staying late at work, George did not even consider it necessary to explain the reason. Alien went to work in the salon as if on autopilot. And then such a shock. George has another family. Her husband has a child on the side. The baby she couldn't give birth to. In the morning, Alien drank coffee and went to the salon. Thoughts of the double life of her beloved husband did not leave her. She walked, hardly seeing anything in front of her. She was startled out of her state by the screeching of car tires right at the pedestrian crossing. A huge black Jeep hit a girl with a stroller. Alien rushed to the victim. At this time, the driver of the Jeep turned on the rear and disappeared from view in just a matter of seconds. Girl, are you alive?" Alien bent over the young mother lying on the asphalt. A crowd had already begun to gather. A pool of blood was slowly developing on the asphalt next to the victim's head. Hearing the baby crying, Alien rushed to pick up the overturned stroller. The boy in the blue suit was crying. The woman unhooked the restraining straps on the stroller and grabbed the child in her arms. "Hush, hush, little one," she whispered to the baby. "It's okay. It's all over now. Don't cry." She rocked the boy, hugging him to her. At that time, the ambulance sirens were heard. People stumbled, giving doctors access to the girl lying on the asphalt. The victim was put on a stretcher and loaded into a car. Almost simultaneously, the police arrived with the ambulance. "Is she alive?" The uniformed officer asked the doctor. "So far, yes, but I'm afraid it won't take," said the doctor. "Here, there was a phone next to her. Okay, give it to me. I need to call my relatives." "Are there any witnesses?" A policeman shouted into the crowd. "I'm a witness," said Alien, continuing to rock the baby in her arms. The policeman looked closely at the frightened woman with the child. "I had to decide something. Call my relatives. In the meantime, what should I do with it?" "Let this woman babysit him." "Get in the car," the employee said, and he began to look through the contacts in the victim's smartphone and call the numbers that he thought belonged to the closest people. On the way to the hospital, the baby calmed down and fell asleep. Carefully carrying him in her arms, Alien entered the emergency room and sat down on a chair. "Wait here, my father will arrive now." "I got through," the policeman told the woman. "What about the boy's mom?" the alien asked. "She's being operated on. Nothing is known yet. We will wait. The employee left, leaving Alien alone with the baby in her arms. She stared at the baby's face and couldn't take her eyes off it. He looked about a year old. Maybe more, maybe less. Alien didn't understand this. He smacked his lips pathetically in his sleep, sometimes smiling slightly at something. The woman's heart was bleeding. She did not notice how the door to the room opened, and an agitated man ran into the room. Alien raised her head and saw George in front of her. The husband was struggling to cope with excitement, breathing heavily. "What are you doing here?" George asked, not understanding why his wife was holding his son in her arms. "And you?" Alien was even more surprised. "I got a call. They told me that Angela was in an accident with a child." "Which Angela?" "Meh." Alien didn't understand anything at all. George took a deep breath and sat down next to his wife. He looked at his son, stroked his head. "This is my son, Eric," the man said softly. "A son?" Oh, she understood everything, but for some reason she didn't feel any emotions at all. "Yes, it happened that way. He's very handsome. He looks like you," Alien smiled. George looked in surprise at his wife, who was admiring his child born to another woman. The wife did not throw a tantrum, did not ask questions. She was hugging his son to her chest, and he was sleeping peacefully, smiling at something in his sleep. "I'll explain everything to you. I wanted to say something to George." "Don't. The main thing is that he is alive. The main thing is that the baby was not injured." Alien put her finger to her lips. The figure of a doctor appeared at the end of the corridor. "I'm really sorry. We did everything we could. She died. Be strong." The doctor turned around and left. Alien and George were silent. The baby in the woman's arms stirred, waking up, as if he felt that his mother was no more. Alien was the first to speak. "What a horror. What's going to happen now?" she said, not looking at her husband. "I don't know. She doesn't even have any relatives. She was a visitor, it seems," George said. Alien stood up resolutely. The only right plan matured in her head. The city cemetery was quiet. Autumn leaves flew off the trees, laying down on the paths, granite slabs of tombstones and graves. A small group of people saw off Angela on her last journey. There were red flowers on her grave. "Angela loved everything bright and catchy, even if there are red roses on her grave," George said. Among those who saw Angela off on her last journey were colleagues. Dressed in black clothes, they looked sadly at the photo of a beautiful young woman who just a year ago became the mother of a beautiful baby. The colleagues were talking quietly. No one could accept until now that a cheerful, never discouraged, very energetic woman died under the wheels of a reckless driver who did not even consider it necessary to call an ambulance and provide first aid. George and Alien were standing at the grave. They were silent. The terrible tragedy made them close, dear people again. George took his wife's hand and stroked her palm. He did not doubt for a minute that everything in their lives would be fine. The husband and wife stood for a while longer and slowly walked along the cemetery alley towards the gate. There, outside the gate, Anne was strolling leisurely, pushing a stroller in front of her with her little grandson Eric.